A final thought. Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian parliament have just essentially banned the Orthodox Church on Ukraine's soil. They're closing down those churches. They've accused some clerics involved with the church of acting as agents of Russia. Some have been accused of treason. Do you, as a former priest in the Russian Orthodox Church, agree with Ukraine that the church has been used as an agent, in effect, in places like Ukraine?
I think that what happens in a war, especially if the victory does not seem to be very near, is that the massive aggression is being canalized from the external enemy to the internal one. So in this sense, I would say that Ukraine is really repeating the well, I wouldn't want to use a mistake, it has to be some stronger word, but what is being done in Russia. So obviously the state in Ukraine is far from being neutral, and of course as a Christian, as a priest, I cannot approve of cases when the churches are taken over by violence and by force, and the authorities turn their blind eye. I'm not necessarily saying the government as such, but the local governments. And I don't think that this questions can be decided by violence and by force.
Andrei Koroshkin, we have to end there. I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
We will have a great day. Welcome to Friday, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg with our team at the show. You're listening to CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. It's 11 degrees right now in the city of Winnipeg. 30% chance we're going to have some showers this morning and a high of 19. Show's on the air till 8:37 AM. If you need to tell us anything about the morning commute, please call Dylan Longhurst, who's also directing the show. Good morning, Dylan. 788-3093. Also here this morning, Abby Adiyemi behind the controls. Abby covers weather on our show. Good morning, Abby. And Kevin Ipatebo behind the controls of YouTube. Hello, Kevin. All right, let's get right into the news this morning. 3 minutes to 6. Heather Wells joins us live from our CBC Manitoba News Centre with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, advanced polls open today in the Elmwood-Transcona federal by-election. The federal Conservatives have a strategy to wrest Elmwood-Transcona away from the NDP by tying the New Democrats to the unpopular Liberals. Conservative by-election signs in the riding feature NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in a handshake with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The Conservative candidate has actually challenged his NDP counterpart to vote against the Liberals in a confidence motion. So we'll hear more about that. And a new book published by Brandon University aims to start a conversation among students about sexual violence on campus. We'll hear that story as well in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, today on our show, in the first hour of the program, it is not just Friday, as I mentioned off the top. It is the first Fridays in the Exchange. It's that time of year again. We're going to hear about an event that's also a first for Winnipeg. It combines drag performance with WSO musicians. So stay tuned. We'll hear all about it. We have a live guest coming in fact, right after 6. Also in the program this morning, Overheated is a collaboration between 3 CBC radio programs. It's going to be coming to you soon. You may have heard about this. What on Earth, White Coat, Black Art, and Quirks and Quarks. And the host of Quirks and Quarks, Bob McDonald, is going to join us to talk all about the series and as well about what he's seeing and noticing in terms of the science behind our cities overheating. So stay tuned. We'll have that for you. And to the first week of school. Today we're going to talk about how challenging it can be to be an international student, a newcomer student, starting in a new school in a new place, but also what the trends are this year for resources.
Today on Q, it's showtime.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Beetlejuice, the long-awaited sequel is finally out. And to celebrate, I will talk to director Tim Burton and star Catherine O'Hara about recapturing the wild, improvisational magic of the original.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin in Ramstein Air Base in Germany and the announcement of more military aid for Ukraine just moments ago by Canada's Defence Minister Bill Blair.
Victory in Ukraine is not just merely restoring their sovereign borders and driving Russia out of Ukraine, but it's also creating the circumstances that would allow Ukraine to be secure and safe and prosperous in the future. And in order to do that, it does require a longer-term investment in military capability so that they can defend themselves.
The aid includes pilot training and supplying decommissioned armored vehicles to be used for spare parts. As the CBC's Murray Brewster explains, Kyiv has signaled it's prepared to take it all.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz this week showing off the brand new air defense system being donated to Ukraine. Allies are gathered in Germany to take stock of Ukraine's military needs and what can be pledged. Canada has revealed more details on how it will train Ukrainian F-16 pilots, a $389 million investment over 5 years that was previously announced at the NATO summit this summer. It's becoming even more clear, however, that after $4.5 billion in equipment pledges, Canada is down to bits and bobs of military hardware. The federal government will donate over 80,000 retired rocket motors meant to power air-to-surface CVRN-7 rockets that used to hang off of CF-18 fighters. It's also pledging to send nearly 100 vehicle frames from decommissioned armored vehicles.
Ukrainians are ready to take even junk, tear it apart, and make 1 out of 3 machines. But this is something that can protect our soldiers.
That's Oleksandra Ustinova, a leading Ukrainian parliamentarian, in an interview with CBC News last spring as she toured Canadian military bases.
There are a lot of stuff that can be donated, but is not for some reason. And I don't understand why, because, for example, Canada has a lot of armed vehicles.
Her pleas were evidently heard. However, the Canadian Army has hundreds of old armored vehicles it's prepared to scrap. Bisons, Coyote reconnaissance vehicles, and tracked personnel carriers, which the Ukrainians believe can be useful in one capacity or another. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
The father of the 14-year-old accused in this week's deadly shooting in a Georgia high school is now also facing murder charges. 2 students and 2 teachers were killed when a gunman opened fire at Appalachia High School with an AR-style rifle. They are the most serious charges ever laid against a parent in a mass shooting in the U.S. Katie Nicholson has more from Washington. Katie, walk us through these charges.
So the 14-year-old alleged shooter is going to be tried as an adult. He's already facing 4 felony murder charges. But last night, Georgia authorities also decided to hold the boy's father accountable. Here's Georgia Bureau of Investigation Director Chris Hosey.
He is charged with the following: 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
After this shooting, the teen's grandfather had called for Colin Gray to be charged. He believes if his grandson didn't have that AR-style gun, he wouldn't have killed anyone. And the boy's aunt also says that he had been begging for mental health support before this incident.
Of course, Katie, this isn't the first time parents have been charged in connection with a school shooting.
Yeah, that's right. Although this is certainly the most serious charge leveled against the parent of a shooter. Earlier this year, Jennifer and James Crumbly were both convicted of involuntary manslaughter. In 2021, their son shot and killed 4 fellow students. And the judge said that the Crumbleys missed opportunities to prevent their son from possessing a handgun, among many other possible interventions. And the prosecutor in that case, Karen McDonald, says she had hoped that that conviction would serve as a wake-up call and help prevent similar tragedies. So she had this reaction to the Georgia charges.
My reaction is rage, because the prosecution of the Crumbleys was never, ever meant to be a floodgate of charges against parents, because it was such an egregious set of facts. And so I think I share the emotions of the entire country that even after that well-publicized case, we're still here.
Tonight in the city of Winder, there will be a memorial service for the 4 victims, 2 math teachers and 2 14-year-old boys who were killed.
Katie Nicholson in Washington. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome. People
on the Chinese holiday island of Hainan are experiencing a powerful storm. Typhoon Yagi made landfall there this morning after sweeping just south of Hong Kong. Hundreds of people had to take shelter. The storm hit there yesterday. That's where we reached journalist Laura Westbrook. Laura, what is the situation in Hong Kong now?
John, it's still raining quite heavily here. Schools were closed yesterday, the stock market suspended. This storm brought heavy rain and strong winds overnight as it swept past the city. 5 people were injured and treated at hospitals, but the damage appears to be minimal. Businesses have now reopened as this storm was downgraded from the 3rd strongest signal. This is expected to be the strongest typhoon to hit the tropical holiday island of Hainan in 10 years. Hainan is known for its sandy beaches and duty-free shopping. It's no stranger to typhoons, but very few have been classified as super typhoons in the past. Typhoon Yagi is also likely to affect neighboring Guangdong province and is bringing with it a lot of rain to southern China. And so authorities are really taking it seriously. They have warned of massive and destructive winds. Hundreds of thousands of people have been moved to safety. All flights in and out of the main airport of Hainan are cancelled. Fishing boats have been returned to port. Businesses, public transport and schools are all closed. John.
Thanks, Laura. Laura Westbrook reporting from Hong Kong. At least 17 students are dead after a fire at a boarding school in Kenya. More than a dozen others suffered serious burns. Police say the number of fatalities will likely rise. Officials say the fire broke out in the student dormitory Thursday night. The private primary school is about 150 kilometers north of Nairobi. President William Ruto has ordered an investigation, saying those responsible will be held to account. Political activist Vladimir Kara-Murza thought that he would die in a Siberian prison. But last month, he was freed, part of that secretive prisoner exchange involving the U.S., Russia, Germany, and at least 4 other countries. The deal may have saved his life. Now, Vladimir Kara-Murza is sharing his story with the CBC's Briar Stewart in a Canadian exclusive. She joins me now from London. Briar, what did Kara-Murza tell you about this prisoner exchange? Did he have any idea it was going to happen?
No, John, he had no idea at all, not until the moment where the exchange actually began. I mean, he'd been sentenced to 25 years in prison for treason and spreading false information. He spent 11 months of that time in solitary confinement in Siberia. He spent most of his days in isolation, trying to maintain his sanity, until suddenly, in the early hours of the morning in late July, visitors arrived in the middle of the night.
I'm suddenly woken up by this loud noise of the doors of my cell being opened and a group of prison officers bursting into the cell. And the senior officer came up to me and said, "You have 10 minutes to get up and get ready." And at that moment, I was absolutely certain that I was going to be let out and be executed.
He actually thought he was going to be taken into the woods and shot. Instead, he was taken to the local airport. He was put on a commercial plane and taken to Moscow to another prison. And about 5 days later, guards came into his cell again. This time they were wearing black balaclavas over their faces. And they escorted him onto a bus where he saw other political prisoners. And that was the moment he knew that he was part of an exchange. They were taken to the airport and transported to Turkey. And after they got off the plane, they met with officials there, and a woman from the American embassy went up to him, handed him a phone and said U.S. President Joe Biden was on the line and that he was in the Oval Office with members of Kara-Murza's family.
When I heard their voices, there are no words in any language that I know that can describe the feeling.
So, Briar, what does Kara-Murza plan to do now?
Well, it's just been over a month since his release. He's reunited with his family, and he's now crisscrossing Europe, meeting with leaders, thanking them for their support. And he does plan to visit Canada soon, because while he was in prison, Canada's Parliament made him an honorary citizen to recognize the advocacy work that he's been doing to try and create a fair and free Russia.
I'm deeply humbled and deeply honored by this particular award, but I accept it not for myself, but on behalf of all of those people in Russia. The many, many people in Russia who are unjustly imprisoned by Vladimir Putin's regime for having spoken out against the war in Ukraine.
And Kara-Murza hopes that one day he will be able to return to Moscow, but that can only happen after Vladimir Putin's grip on power ends.
Briar Stewart in London. Thanks, Briar.
You're welcome.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. The top story this hour, CBC investigates feature Meet the Right-Wing Canadian Influencers Accused of Collaborating in an Alleged Russian Propaganda Scheme.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, and on YouTube. Bit of a chilly start to Friday. So we were sitting at just 11 degrees. Abby's going to update that for us in a moment. This hour on the program, we're going to be talking about logging. It's been a while since we heard about that industry when it comes to emissions, but if carbon emissions from logging were reported separately by the federal government, they would rank as the third biggest polluter in our economy. Now, that's coming from a new report from several environmental groups, so we're going to hear more about that report this hour. So that's coming up at 10 to 7. In addition, this hour on the program, it is not just Friday, it is First Fridays in the Exchange. We're going to hear about an event that's also a first for Winnipeg. It combines drag performance with WSO musicians. Stay tuned. We have a live guest in a moment. Well, they're all live guests, to be clear. Sometimes when I say that, I should qualify, right? We have a guest who is live in studio with us this morning. All right, also with us live this morning, but from our news center, Heather Wells is here with our headlines now at 6:11. Hi, Heather.
Hi there. Yeah, just staying alive. A planned home for people who are recovering from addictions is meeting with opposition in Lindenwoods. The city approved a conditional use application for Regenesis Center for Recovery to use a home in that area. The nonprofit organization would then provide supervised live-in secondary care to 6 adults at a time, but more than 100 neighbors are not happy. They worry about the center's proximity to a school and a seniors' home. We're going to hear more about their planned appeal coming up. And advance polls open today in the Elmwood-Transcona federal by-election. The federal Conservatives have a strategy to take Elmwood-Transcona away from the NDP, tying the New Democrats to the unpopular Liberals. We'll hear what one political scientist has to say about that in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
And we're live actually talking all about that by-election in Elmwood. We're going to be next Thursday. I like to call it our community studios. We're going to be at the Elm restaurant on Henderson Highway 163. I believe Henderson is that exact address. And we're inviting you because we've invited all the candidates to be there. So this is about you, voters, residents, people who care about that area, Elmwood-Transcona. It's a huge riding. It is just massive. So there's a lot of people I know listening that are going to be affected by the outcome of this. So if you want to be there with us, it's next Thursday, InfoRad Live at the Elm. All right, let's get into the weather this morning. Abby.
It's going to be another cool day in the city. We are at 10 degrees at this time, downtown Winnipeg. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds today, a slight chance of showers this morning. Some fog patches I noticed on my way in that will be clearing as the day progresses, just to brighten up your late morning, and we will be reaching a high of 19. And for tonight, mostly clear. A few clouds would try to make their appearance, but we're going to have more of like a clear sky tonight, and then cool off to about 6 degrees. In other region, we are looking at single digits. Thompson at 1, Churchill at 3. Thompson has some fog patches here and there, and it's clear in Churchill. Down south, we're seeing 6 and 7s and partly cloudy, and we are just looking at highs around 19 for most region. And then just looking into the future forecast, I see highs. We're going to be warming up once we get into the weekend. This is just like the last lap of the cold snap for the week.
Hey man, if you got some new clothes to go back to school, like the fall stuff, then the weather's perfect. Right?
Yep.
Look at the bright side. Let's get into what's happening on the morning commute and remind you of the numbers that you can call. Dylan Longhurst, good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. I'm not usually on this show, so I'm not used to how dark it still is.
It's startling, right?
I swear the last time the sun was at least coming up at this time, and I'm peeking out the window, I'm like, no, that's night.
Nothing.
That's still nighttime. Yeah, on that commute, still nighttime, not a lot going on, so pretty slow. If you see something on the roads, you can always give us a call, though, 204-788-3093.
Well, while we're feeling nighttime, let's talk about something nighttime. The lobby of the Centennial Concert Hall is going to be filled tonight with the sound and movement thanks to the Downtown Diva Ensemble. Now, this is the new collaboration I was alluding to that is happening as part of the First Fridays in the Exchange. Local drag performers and vocalists are going to be accompanied by the WSO musicians. Now, one of the co-producers of the event is Synonym Art Consultation. Their creative director is Chloe Chafe, and Chloe's in studio with us early this morning. Hi there.
Good morning.
So tell me a little bit about Downtown Diva.
Yeah, so this is a really exciting initiative that actually only came out about 1 month ago. It's really, really fast. And it really came about from the musicians of the WSO. They wanted to invite the community, the public, to come into the space that they perform in. So this is a chance for folks to come into the lobby, meet them, but have something a little bit more contemporary, engaging, and innovative. So we brought together vocalists and drag artists to work all together.
Why is that important, do you think? Like, how has it been? What you've been working on the collaboration, as you said, it just came up a month ago, but what's the response been in terms of what it means to build community in that way?
Oh, so fantastic. As Synonym, we always have put artists first and the community first with accessibility. And so with this being an artist-led initiative, it's really special that the musicians of the WSO and the drag artists will be so vulnerable in using a venue that is different. There isn't the divide of the stage and the public. So I think it really does create stronger communities as folks can really share their identities, share their stories without being so separate of stage and audience.
I've been to actually some events that are in the lobby there, and it is very unique to go.
It's so spectacular. Yeah.
In terms of what people will see and hear if they attend, can you tell us a bit about the show?
Yeah, great question. So we will have 28 members of the WSO. So it is smaller than your normal symphony, but still really quite spectacular. Then we have 3 vocalists, Sheena Ratai, Amit Shun, and Lady Muse. And so they will be singing alongside the musicians of the WSO. And then with that, the drag artists will be lip syncing to those 3 vocalists. So it really is a different drag show than folks are used to. You know, it's not the big club, excitement, the loudness, the pops, but instead it is a really more mindful, really dramatic show.
Is that because of the space? Like, I wonder how the queer community is feeling about performing in this, larger, more mainstream space. And actually, we were talking off air. It's part of a trend, actually, of the queer community performing at a whole bunch of different sort of more mainstream spaces, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a long history of large institutions and art institutions not bringing in the queer community and not having a diverse community really in both audience and performers. And so we are seeing a great trend of institutions like the Forks, the WAG, and now we're coming into the Centennial Concert Hall. And so it really is this great step towards a more equitable art scene here in Winnipeg. And it really shows that the community wants it. That we are seeing really high numbers, really high attendance, very high support. And so we really want to keep that going. And so we also want to make sure that these institutions aren't just doing one-offs, that we are doing multiple shows there.
And that's happening because I have Thorgy Thor is doing an event. So this is kind of a precursor to the performance. That's a drag queen, Thorgy Thor. And that's with the WSO in November is the month, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So this is kind of a local version of that, which we really, really love, that intimacy before a massive star like a RuPaul's Drag Race star comes in.
Should people, from the drag community point of view, if someone's listening, or queer community point of view, rather, what if someone's feeling still intimidated or like they somehow can't bring out their full self because it's the WSO and, that whole feeling that somehow they have to.
Absolutely. And you know what? That is just going to take time for sure. But I will say that this is a free event. It's early. The doors open at 6. The official show starts at 7. So, you can come in, come out. There's not even as formal seating. So if you aren't quite wanting to commit, you can just come for a couple tracks. You can dress however you want. So you can come as casual as you like, or you can come in full symphony drag, kind of whatever. So it really is a come as you are, come when you can, and with no financial big risk.
And that question actually holds. I've asked that question around so many different events. I mean, anytime we do anything on the symphony, it's inevitable. Somebody will call and say, "Oh, I must have to sort of calm down and behave behave a certain way or dress a certain way. And it's just breaking all those stereotypes to say, this is art. Let's share our art.
That's exactly it. And I really have to give it to the musicians of the WSO for recognizing that.
Yeah.
As musicians, to say, you know what, let's kind of break that barrier. And I think that when folks see that they really are people, that they're your neighbors, they're your community members that are here and just want to share their art with you, I think that will also help with some of that community building and kind of taking down some of those barriers.
What do you hope people walk away with after seeing the performances themselves?
I think the complexities of drag, I think that sometimes it is kind of seen as this club culture, which of course is the root and a really incredible part of it. But I think to show the complexities of the art form, but also the magic of collaboration, it really shows the openness and excitement of different mediums all coming together. For these vocalists, this is a big change. For the drag artists, this is a big change. And then for the musicians of the WSO to be playing around with building their own set, with choosing the tracks with the vocalists, with the drag artists. There's a real magic that you have to kind of just experience in person to see it, to see how special that building is.
Enjoy tonight. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
getting up early and being with us. Appreciate it. That's Chloe Chafe, founder and creative director of Synonym Art Consultation. So they are co-producing for Downtown Diva Ensemble. It will happen tonight in the lobby of the Centennial Concert Hall. Just a reminder once again that it is free. Check it out. Great thing to do on a Friday night. Doors open at 6 o'clock tonight.
Taking a look at your 7-day forecast, it's going to be a real scorcher out there.
We are overheated. This weekend, explore the impact of rising temperatures with some of your favorite CBC Radio 1 programs. Heat and Climate on What on Earth with Laura Lynch. Heat and Science on Quirks and Quarks with Bob McDonald. Heat and Health on White Coat Black Art with Dr. Brian Goldman. Listen live, on demand on the Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Bob McDonald's on our show this morning, actually. We're going to see Bob and hear from Bob. That's coming up after 7 o'clock. So we spoke with him via Zoom a little bit earlier. So we're going to have that on for you in about an hour. It is 10 degrees in Winnipeg, mainly clear. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. Well, it is back to school week, just last day. Probably tired. I love that the first week's short because you need that, right, when you're getting back in the routine. But whether it's kindergarten or university, the first week back and the first day of school specifically certainly has its challenges. Finding your class, making new friends, not to mention focusing on getting good grades. It's what students at post-secondary schools have been navigating all week long. Now, as a fifth-year student at the University of Manitoba, Peace Ogebule wanted to share what she has learned. So she took to TikTok with some advice for students starting their first day of university. Peace joined CBC's Faith Fundal in studio here yesterday, and they started by talking about how it feels to start her final year of studies this week.
Being in my final year, it's very motivating, honestly, because it's just like I can see and just feel and touch for the reward already, just because it's almost here. Definitely feel like a big gust of like motivation and just like passion to just get it over with and get my degree.
You're kind of on the other end of the curve, right?
Yeah.
Does it make you think about what your first day of school was like, or what it was like when you first started as a first-year student?
I definitely did some reminiscing. Yeah, I started my university in 2020, so I was in my bedroom on my computer. Definitely feels very different just going to school, being on campus, seeing all the new students, all the first years, versus when I was first year, I was just in my room.
So when you look at what it was like when you first started to how it evolved to actually going to classes and being in person, what stands out for you in terms of advice you might have for students who are now on this side of that curve as well, where they actually go to classes and meet other students and meet their professors?
I believe that going to class requires an extensive, like way more amount of effort than being online.
It's so different, right?
Because you're there. Different.
You can see people and you have to navigate through that.
Yeah, and half of the class doesn't have their camera off. You can actually interact with your classmates. You can interact with your professor on a more personal level. You know, they actually can acknowledge you better, just you being a student in their classroom. Definitely requires a lot of effort in terms of just like showing up and standing out for yourself and, putting yourself out there, I would say so. Yeah.
How did you, because I mean, it sounds like part of this is building relationships, right, with other students and professors. How did you what did you have to think about to be able to build those relationships?
I honestly had a really hard time just because I started as a COVID first year student. So my first year back, which was in 2022, it was a lot hard for me because I was kind of confused on how to communicate with people. I was
Right.
like, do I just go up to the professor and say hi?
Yeah.
But after a couple of weeks, I picked up on like common etiquette that a lot of other students were showing. So for example, saying thank you to the professor after the class is done, or going up to the professor and introducing yourself.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it?
It sounds so simple, but it was so complex for me because I never experienced that in 2020. Once your class is done, you just exit the Zoom call.
Right,
You know,
just end the call and
exactly.
say
There's
goodbye.
there's nothing else. Yeah. So definitely being able to actually go up to other students and ask, hey, like, how are you? What's your major? What year are you? It just allows you to build that personal connection with other students. Yeah.
What made you want to share this TikTok video?
My little sister's actually starting university. She started yesterday, so it was her first year, and I gave her a bunch of advice. And I was like, honestly, I feel like a lot of people would benefit from hearing some advice on school because I know how nerve-wracking it can be. Even as a fifth-year student, I walked into school yesterday and I was like, oh.
It probably brought you back to what those jitters were.
Yeah, it can be a little very nerve-wracking, actually.
What
But
was her first day of school like? What did she say to you?
she looked like she had gone through it. She was very overwhelmed,
Yeah.
especially because, like she went to a small high school here. So just seeing that many people, she was like, oh, this is crazy. There's so many students. The context of the information you're taught in class is very heavy. And I was just telling her like, yeah, that's it. This is university.
What kinds of things did you did folks ask you in the replies after you posted the video?
Well, mostly it was just like a lot of emphasis on making friends. I believe that's one of the hardest things a lot of people struggle with in university is because in high school, you already like it's a lot easier for you to make friends when you're in high school because, you have a class with a person. Automatically, you guys are just friends, right?
Right, yeah.
And in university, because we are in a smaller city, a lot of people come to university with their established high school friend groups. So the first thing you'll notice when you're in school is either a group of like kids with their headphones on or the other group of
Right.
kids just with their friends already, and you get confused on where to put yourself or like
How do you even break into that?
how do
group,
you break
right?
into that, right? And I think the number one tip that I gave was to go to the events a lot. The University of Manitoba hosts a lot of events, and it can be like very specific to the faculty that you're in, right? And that's something I didn't do, unfortunately, and it gave me a hard time in making friends because I was just so scared. I was like, but honestly, if you go to these events, the organizers and just the committee, they're very friendly, and it's a great way for you to meet new people.
How do you balance your studies and folks' attempt to have a social life?
Right. Yeah, that's a really hard one. That's a challenge I will be facing this semester because I am taking 5 classes this semester.
That's a lot of
So
classes.
yeah.
Have you done the mental math?
Yeah, it's second day of class, and I was like, wow. But I believe the number one thing is, you're at school to get an education, and the degree is honestly the main goal. So I always tell myself I can see my friends when I'm done studying. I can see my friends when my assignments are done. And, it motivates me to work harder because I want to see my friends. So the number one thing I always do is the first day of class, I look through the syllabus and outline all the due dates. Just having a list of knowing when everything is due makes it so much easy so you don't fall behind and fall off track. Yeah.
So if you could talk to 5 years ago you, what's one thing you would want the version of you 5 years ago to really think about?
Because of the COVID, I'm just going to blame it on COVID, but because of that, I really withdrew from putting myself out there and going to a lot of these events. If I had done that in my first year, I think the experience would have been a lot more different. But you know what? It's okay. But also in terms of organization as well, always being on track with things because you can forget things so quick, and not even with just school, but also your personal life, because you don't want to be so indulged in school where you forget your personal life. Because I remember in my first-ish year of university, I remember one time my mom came to my room and she was like, hey, you need to relax. You need to just chill. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Maybe a 10, 15-minute break, take a walk with my dog. It goes a long way. It really does. Yeah.
That is Peace Ogebule, a fifth-year student at the University of Manitoba. She spoke with CBC's Faith Fundal yesterday on Up to Speed, and you can check out her advice to fellow students on TikTok. It's at Your Peace Oge, which is OGE. OGE. It's coming up to news time here. So far, so good, so early with the commute. We don't have any problems to report, but if you do need to, report them to Dylan Longhurst at 788-3093. And I want to mention that on business news coming up, we've been talking about this deal for a long time, but this morning we have news that the Japanese operator of 7-Eleven convenience stores, apparently that deal, that takeover plan has fallen through for now, the change that they were expecting. So Christely Ramlakam will have analysis of that right after our CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is a cool 10 degrees in downtown Winnipeg. We'll stay cool throughout the day, much like yesterday. A mix of sun and clouds, chance of showers, and a high today of 19. We do warm up for the weekend. The Conservatives have a strategy to take the federal riding of Elmwood-Transcona away from the NDP. Advanced polls in that by-election open today. And as CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the strategy involves tying the New Democrats to the Liberals.
For weeks, Conservative by-election signs in Elmwood-Transcona have featured NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in a handshake with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This is an NDP stronghold, but the Liberals are unpopular, and the NDP spent the past 2 years in a confidence and supply deal that effectively kept Trudeau in power. Singh ended that deal on Wednesday, but the Conservatives are sticking with the strategy. Their candidate Colin Reynolds asked his NDP opponent Leela Dance on Thursday if she'll vote against the Liberals in a confidence motion. Dance says that's something she won't determine in advance.
I'm going to do things issue by issue.
U of M political scientist Roy Scoop says the Conservative strategy is interesting. He doesn't often see one party compete against another by tying them to a third.
It's kind of a particular strategy at this moment in time.
Advanced polls open today in Elmwood-Transcona. Election day is September 16th. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A planned home for people recovering from addictions is meeting a chorus of opposition in Lindenwoods. The city approved that plan earlier this year, but dozens of neighbors are not happy and intend to appeal. Details from CBC's Gavin Axelrod.
Neighbors are hoping to block plans for temporary live-in addiction recovery services in Lindenwoods. The city of Winnipeg approved the Regenesis Center for Recovery's conditional use application. The nonprofit organization hopes to use a home on Lindenwood Drive East until next August, providing supervised, live-in, wraparound secondary care to women and non-binary adults in the 2S, LGBTQIA+, BIPOC, and disabled communities. The home will only house 6 adults at a time, but more than 100 people have filed letters and notices of appeal opposing the plan. Some are concerned about the center's proximity to a school and seniors' home. Others are unhappy about the overall communication from Regenesis. Executive Director Cindy Foster says she's heard support from area residents and others across the province, and says the home's opponents represent a small, vocal minority. The appeal hearing is set for September 11th. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A shocking incident at a Saskatoon high school. Police say a young girl set another teen on fire. Now a 14-year-old girl is under arrest. A 15-year-old girl is in hospital with serious injuries. The school division says it was a traumatic incident for the entire community. Saskatoon Police Sergeant Ken Kane says his officers were shaken by what happened.
The mood in our office right now is quite low, and there's some upset people, obviously, because this is not something that we ever expected.
The school has canceled classes for today. In Georgia, the 14-year-old accused in this week's deadly school shooting there is scheduled to make his first court appearance this morning. And the appearance follows the boy's father being taken into custody and charged with 3 series of offenses.
4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
Chris Housley with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. 4 people, 2 students and 2 adults, were killed in that shooting. Colt Gray, the alleged shooter, has been charged with 4 counts of murder. To Ramstein Air Base in Germany, Ramstein, and the announcement this morning of more military aid for Ukraine by Canada's Defense Minister, Bill Blair.
Victory in Ukraine is not just merely restoring their sovereign borders and driving Russia out of Ukraine, but it's also creating the circumstances that would allow Ukraine to be secure and safe and prosperous in the future. And in order to do that, it does require a longer-term investment in military capability so that they can defend themselves.
The aid includes pilot training, but also decommissioned armored vehicles to be used for spare parts. You can hear more on this story coming up on World Report at 7. A new book published by Brandon University aims to start a conversation among students about sexual violence. The graphic novel, It Happened to Me and It's Not Okay, is being released during what is called Red Week, a time when students are most at risk of sexual violence on campus. Jessica Laxdal is Brandon University's Sexual Violence Education and Prevention Coordinator. She says the red zone is the first 6 to 8 weeks of the school year. Those weeks account for about 50% of reported sexual violence on campus.
When we think of sexual violence, we often go to the extreme, but when we look at under the umbrella, it covers many different areas. So I think for those who have experienced it, it really can help normalize and validate what happened to them is wrong, and hopefully it brings the courage for them to speak out and get that support that they need.
It Happened to Me and I'm Not Okay officially launches Tuesday at Brandon University's Evans Theatre. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, I rarely do this, but I have a special good morning that's a bit personal.
Okay.
So this week, 30 years ago, I started college at Red River.
Oh, wow.
I feel like I'm 90.
Come on.
But
That's
yeah.
wonderful.
Anyway, I have some classmates that are in town, so I just, that's all I'll say. But good morning, everyone.
They must have like a giant portrait of you in Red River because look at all you've done. I'm serious.
I was on a bus bench once. That was quite exciting. And I was tempted. You're always tempted, like, I think I might have, I hope I remember to sit down beside it and take a photo of me sitting by me.
That is the pinnacle, the bus bench.
You've arrived.
Yeah.
At any rate, good morning, everyone. I don't know if anyone else out there is celebrating any reunions, but right, it's back to school time. So a friend of mine texted me that last night. I was like, I didn't even realize it was 30 years. All right, let's get into what's going on for the end of this first week back at school. If you've been slugging through and you've been like really tired, you're probably happy to see Friday. Abby, what's the weather going to be like today?
I'm sure for the kids that were feeling chilly all, the last 2 days, next week is going to be warmer for you. So hang tight. Across the province today, we should be seeing a mix of sun and clouds with areas having some fog patches clearing throughout the day. We'll see temperatures ranging from, the morning period with this cool one, and then the sunny conditions will be coming across as we get into the day. We'll see highs between 19 and 27. Winnipeg currently at 10 degrees and clear. We'll see a mix of sun and clouds today. A slight chance of showers this morning. We saw some fog patches earlier. That will be clearing as we get into the morning period, and would only get to a high of 19. Brandon is partly cloudy at 6 degrees. Today calls for a mainly sunny with fog patches clearing here and there. Highs would reach 20. Thompson is at 1, seeing some misty conditions at this time. Today will bring a mix of sun and clouds later. Those fog patches will be clearing off, and then we'll see some light breeze that would sweep in. We'll get to high of 16 for folks in Thompson. Good morning to our friends in Churchill. It is 3 degrees at this time. Mainly clear out there. We're expecting mainly sunny conditions that will be turning into some cloudy conditions as you get into the afternoon period. The winds will pick up, breezy from the south, and we will get to a high of 17. Darwin is currently clear at 6 degrees. The sun is about to make its appearance there. It's going to be a mainly sunny day. We saw some fog patches in that region this morning. That is clearing up, and then you'll get to a high of 19. Gimli at 8 degrees and clear. The Pembina Valley, the Interlake region rather, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds, and highs would be around 19. Same conditions for Steinbach, and Morris is at 8 degrees and clear at this time. The Pembina Valley region calls for more of clearing conditions this morning. We saw a lot of fog there this morning. That will be dissipating, and the highs would get to 19. In summary, it's just going to be a day filled with a mix of sun and clouds, and then that would clear by the afternoon period, and we'd see highs hovered almost close to 20, but we won't get there.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Before we turn our attention to the commuter line, Dylan, you have an anniversary this week too, I heard.
Well, I can't quite match your 30 years since Red River, but it is, as of this week, 10 years since I started at CMU
All right.
Unsure of what I was going to do, and somehow I ended up here. So
I love that.
You know.
Yeah. I was at U of M first, and then I went to Red River. So I was also unsure at the very beginning of what I was going to do, but landed here and apparently never looked back. Let's get into this commute then. It's pretty quiet to start.
Yeah, no, still very quiet on the commuter line. We haven't heard of anything slowing you down out there. I imagine it will start to get busier as we get to those times that school kids will be making their way to their first Friday of the new school year. But for now, it is all quiet. If you see something, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Dylan. Dylan Longhurst filling in for Corey Funk, who is away taking care of his new baby. Family of 4 now. Congrats to Corey. It is 20 to 7 and time for Crystalie Ramlichan to fill us in on business news. Good morning, Crystalie.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So we've been talking about this deal for a while, and apparently it might be falling through. This big business deal proposed by a Canadian convenience store. Maybe falling through for now. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so the Japanese operator of 7-Eleven convenience stores has rejected a bid worth almost $39 billion from Canada's Alimentation Couche-Tard, which is also the owner of Circle K. So the offer would have been the largest foreign takeover of a Japanese business in history. But the parent company 7 & I Holdings says the 7-Eleven business was undervalued in this offer. And, since the news of the offer broke, shares of the company have gone up. Now, in a letter to investors, the company says the offer is not in the best interest of shareholders and other stakeholders. And the company has written to Couche-Tard to say it's open to engaging in sincere discussion if there's a proposal that fully recognizes the value of the convenience store chain. Now, the company also feels the takeover would face significant challenges under competition law as well. Now, yesterday, the chief executive of the Quebec-based Couche-Tard said the company was confident it could complete the takeover, which would have created the 4th biggest retailer in the world after Walmart, Amazon, and Costco. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if they, put forward another offer or what happens there.
We've also been watching another company, it seems, a lot in business news this year, which is Red Lobster. They've been facing a lot of challenges, but it says Red Lobster that it will soon exit bankruptcy protection. What are the details here?
Yes. So after months of dozens of restaurants closing and headlines about endless shrimp woes, a U.S. judge has approved the seafood chain's reorganization plan. A lender group led by asset manager Fortress is acquiring the business. And this comes about 4 months after Red Lobster filed for bankruptcy protection as it pursued a sale following years of mounting losses. So the chain lost $76 million last year. And plus, in 2014, a private equity firm stripped a lot of the value out of the business by selling its premium real estate and then keeping that money and then leasing the land back to locations. Now, the restaurant expects to still operate about 544 locations across the U.S. and here in Canada after it emerges from bankruptcy, but that is still down from the 578 it had in May. And under the terms of the acquisition, which is expected to close by the end of September, the chain will continue to operate as an independent company. And once the deal is finalized, Red Lobster will also get a new CEO, the former chief executive of P.F. Chang's.
I'm going to make a shirt that says "Endless Shrimp Woes." To quote you. And how's Netflix trying to get us hooked on even more reality TV?
Like we need to watch any more reality TV, but no, just kidding. I don't like reality TV. But, they're trying to do this with better dubbing of foreign language shows. So it's using South Korean content as a testing ground. And the company is offering culture classes to voice actors to nail the nuances of translation for a global audience. So the company says infusing just enough Korean know-how into English language voiceovers helps avoid a show from coming across as too North American, which could feel forced or awkward. The company is trying to help non-English content find global appeal. And with more competition out there, streaming giants are leaning toward more unscripted shows, which cost less to make than those big-scale originals. So 5 years ago, about 70% of content from major streamers was scripted, and today unscripted shows account for about half.
That's a big number. That's bigger than I thought you were going to say, actually. What's going on in the market, speaking of numbers?
In Europe, stocks are lower for a fifth session in a row. Germany is down, the UK is down, France is down, and Asia markets are mostly falling. Japan is down, Shanghai is down, and the markets in Hong Kong are closed due to a typhoon. Oil is up 29 cents to $69.44 US per barrel. Gold is up $6.80 to $2,549.90 US per ounce, and the dollar is up 0.02 of a cent to 74.1 cents US.
All right, thanks, Crystalie Ramlakan.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Have a good weekend.
Take care, you as well. That's Crystalie Ramlakan with our CBC Business News. We talk to her every morning here on Information Radio. 6:45 a.m. is the time right now, and we have music this morning from Katie St. Germain, Métis country singer from Niverville, and the granddaughter, by the way, of the late country legend Ray St. Germain. Her latest project is called Cleaning House or Trying, which features this next song. It's called High Forever.
Cloud nine, you're the one who put me here. All started when you bought me a beer and we stayed up all night talking. Now I got a ring in your last name. Some things will never change, 'cause baby we're still talking. About big dreams we're living way over the moon. The sky is the limit. That's how we do, that's how we do. You always wanna find that feeling. I'm always gonna break that ceiling. Need that adrenaline rush. Ain't no way we're ever giving it up. There's only one way we're going. Ain't no way we're ever slowing down. As long as we're together, you and I will be chasing that high forever. Nothing ever hits like the first time. We had one hell of a first night, but we still got stars in our eyes. We'll never let them burn out. If I'm ever running, I'm running with you. We don't stop for nothing. That's how we do, that's how we do. You always wanna find that feeling. I'm always gonna break that ceiling. Need that adrenaline rush. Ain't no way we're ever giving it up. There's only one way we're going. Ain't no way we're ever slowing down. As long as we're together, you and I will be chasing that high forever. If I'm ever running, I'm running with you. We don't stop for nothing. That's how we do, that's how we do. Always wanna find that feeling. I'm always gonna break that ceiling. Need that adrenaline rush. Ain't no way we're ever giving it up. There's only one way we're going. Ain't no way we're ever slowing down. As long as we're together, you and I will be chasing that high forever. Chasing that
Pride in Niverville, Métis country singer Katie St. Germain and High Forever on CBC.
Hi, I'm I'm Matea Roach, and I have a new show on CBC. It's called Bookends. Every week, authors from Canada and around the world will join me to discuss their latest books. We'll have best-selling authors and rising stars. Our conversations will be smart and surprising, because when the book ends, the conversation begins.
Bookends with Matea Roach premieres Sunday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland, 3 Pacific, and on demand on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Kevin Ipatebo, as well as Abby Adeyemi and Dylan Longhurst behind the glass this morning, and Heather Wells in our news center. Heather's back with our headlines before the top of the clock here. Also, national and international news is ahead on CBC at 7. Right now, it's 11 minutes to. A little cooler out there this morning than yesterday even. It's 10 degrees, mainly clear, and a mix of sun and cloud for our Friday, and we have a high of 19 in Winnipeg. Well, up next on CBC, according to a new report from several environmental groups, logging would be the third biggest source of emissions in Canada if reported separately. Now, it would be right behind emissions from oil and gas production and transportation. The report calls on the federal government to address logging emissions directly in its climate strategy. To talk about it, Michael Polanyi is with us this morning, Policy and Campaign Manager at Nature Canada. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Marcy.
So what's the benefit of, reporting logging emissions separately from other kinds of emissions in your view?
Well, I mean, clearly we're facing a serious climate crisis. The massive fires and smoke from the fires, I know, is affecting people in your province, people across Canada, hundreds of thousands of evacuations in the last couple of years, billions in damage. So, we're facing this crisis. We need to reduce emissions. All sectors of the Canadian economy need to do their part to cut their emissions. And right now there's one sector that's being overlooked, one sector that the federal government is not clearly telling Canadians what the emissions are from that sector, and that's the logging sector. And so clearly a first step to meeting our climate targets is to report emissions from all sectors of the economy.
I understand there's challenges in reporting and managing logging emissions. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, it is more complex reporting emissions from the forestry sector because there's both emissions when you cut down trees, but there's also sequestration or carbon that's absorbed by trees that are regrowing after logging. So, it's a little complicated, but it can be done, and we did it. We used government data from 2022, the most recent year. We used a methodology that's been developed by researchers from University of Toronto and University of New Brunswick, and we calculated the net emissions from logging, and we found that they were 147 million tons in 2022, which is about 1/5 of Canada's total reported emissions. So it's a big number, and it's definitely a sector that needs more attention.
Was it a number that you said it's a big number? Was it a surprising number to you, or because this is a new study, new data, as you said?
Yeah, it was surprising because it's twice as high as what we estimated last year based on last year's data, and that change is a result of government recalculations of the amount of logging that's taken place historically. So yes, it was quite shocking. There's a lot of attention to the oil and gas sector in Canada and its emissions. There's a lot of attention to the emissions from transportation. Logging is right up there, third behind those in terms of high emitting sectors. And so really there needs to be far more attention to ways to reduce the carbon footprint of our logging industry.
You mentioned wildfires already in our conversation. Can you elaborate a bit on how Canada's current approach to reporting wildfire emissions affects the accuracy of the data for the forestry sector? How are they connected?
Yeah, that's the big problem really is a bias in the way that Canada accounts for emissions and carbon removals, carbon absorption related to natural disturbances, and that includes wildfires. And what Canada does in a nutshell is they do not count emissions from wildfires in their total reported greenhouse gas emissions. And they don't because they say, well, wildfires they're not directly human caused for the most part. They're mostly natural. But the problem arises that Canada then does take credit for the carbon that's pulled out of the atmosphere, the carbon that's absorbed by trees that are just naturally regrowing after fires. And so what it's doing, in effect, is kind of giving the logging industry credit for work that's being done by Mother Nature. And that's hiding or masking the true carbon footprint of the logging industry.
What additional steps do you believe that Canada should take to ensure the emissions are more accurately represented then? In the climate strategy?
Quite simply, really tell Canadians what are the greenhouse gas emissions associated with logging. They tell Canadians what the emissions are from other industries, do so for logging as well. Stop this kind of biased accounting approach, which gives the industry credit for work, that carbon storage work that's done by nature itself, and then put in place an action plan to reduce the emissions from the logging sector. We're certainly not saying that, logging should stop, but in terms of where we're logging, how we're logging, what we're using wood for, excuse me, we need to have a discussion about that. And it's, it's not just good for the environment to do that, not just good for the climate, it's good for jobs and economic competitiveness, because increasingly global markets are wanting wood products that are sustainably produced, and Canada's at danger of being left behind if it doesn't innovate and modernize its industry.
Thank you very much for the analysis this morning and outlining the new research. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Marcy. Have a great day.
You too. That's Michael Polanyi. He's Policy and Campaign Manager at Nature Canada, and we reached him this morning in Ottawa. It is 5 minutes to 7 o'clock now, and it is Friday morning, of course. A short week, first full week back, though, for students across the province. So let's finish up these comments, shall we? We had dozens and dozens of you writing into us on my Facebook page. We asked your advice for students for back to school. Just thought we'd ask a nice big question. Maureen Wanda Machiska says, do your best. Evan Young says, remember your academic effort and marks still count. Focus on those and ignore the rest of what social media and interests want your attention to beyond. Vince Lang, stay off your phone when crossing the street. That'll be good for everybody. Good advice. Karen J. Taylor simply writing in, it's cool to be kind. You got this. And finally, Tanya Williams with our final comment of the week. We've been sharing them on the program all week long. Tanya writing in, your friends don't make you, you make you. Really like that one. It is 3 minutes now to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells is with us from our news center this morning with our headlines. Good morning again, Heather.
Good morning. Well, today is the day. Advance polls open in the Elmwood-Transcona federal by-election. The federal Conservatives have a strategy to win Elmwood-Transcona from the NDP by tying the New Democrats to the unpopular Liberals. We're going to hear more about that. As well, a new book published by Brandon University aims to start a conversation among students about sexual violence. It's a graphic novel, and we'll hear all about it and why it's being released at this time of year, coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, the sky's starting to get a little brighter out there in Winnipeg. It is mainly clear. It's 10 degrees, so it's a cool start to the day. We're going to have sun and cloud for today, and our high is going to be at 19. And we, as Abby said, there could be some fog out there, so take care in case that's happening. And please call the commuter line if you have any updates, which is 788-3093. Things are moving well so far. In the next hour of Information Radio, we have a very special guest. We're going to have our interview via Zoom. You can check it out on YouTube if you are a fan of Bob McDonald. Bob's going to be here to talk about a special collaboration that CBC is rolling out this weekend. It asks the question about our warming world, how our warming world is affecting us, where we live. It's called Overheated. It's a collaboration between What on Earth, as well as a White Coat Black Art and Bob's show Quirks and Quarks. So we'll hear more about it after 7 o'clock, and we're also going to learn more about how and why our cities are overheating. In addition, at 7:40, we're going to meet some local celebrities, or maybe I should say celebrikitties, who are coming together to spend some Meow Mania, some Meow Mania this weekend. That's going to be a super cute, fun story. You probably also want to be on YouTube watching that one. And then at 10 to 8 to Serious Matters in Top News. We're going to talk to someone who specializes in criminology and Indigenous studies here locally about what she says needs to change if the IIU is going to better serve Manitobans. And as you know, this conversation coming out of the investigation that is into the death of First Nations woman Tammy Bateman, who died after being hit by a police cruiser. It has renewed calls to overhaul the IIU, which is, of course, the police watchdog. So we're going to dig into how and also the importance of it. So stay tuned. That's in the next hour of Information Radio. Right now, the World Report. It's 1 minute to 7 o'clock. Stay with us.
Today on The Current.
So close for Atiba Hutchinson. That is so close.
I'm Rebecca Zanbergen. Atiba Hutchinson has helped push soccer in Canada to a whole new level. From the soccer pitches of his Brampton, Ontario childhood to the best clubs in Europe to the World Cup. Atiba Hutchinson coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin at Ramstein Air Base in Germany and the announcement of more military aid for Ukraine this morning by Canada's Defence Minister, Bill Blair.
Victory in Ukraine is not just merely restoring their sovereign borders and driving Russia out of Ukraine, but it's also creating the circumstances that would allow Ukraine to be secure and safe and prosperous in the future. And in order to do that, it does require a longer-term investment in military capability so that they can defend themselves.
The aid announced at Ramstein includes providing pilot training, but also supplying decommissioned armored vehicles to be used for spare parts. As the CBC's Murray Brewster explains, Kyiv has signals it is prepared to take it all.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz this week showing off the brand new air defense system being donated to Ukraine. Allies are gathered in Germany to take stock of Ukraine's military needs and what can be pledged. Canada has revealed more details on how it will train Ukrainian F-16 pilots, a $389 million investment over 5 years that was previously announced at the NATO summit this summer. It's becoming even more clear, however, that after $4.5 billion in equipment pledges, Canada is down to bits and bobs of military hardware. The federal government will donate over 80,000 retired rocket motors meant to power air-to-surface CVRN-7 rockets that used to hang off of CF-18 fighters. It's also pledging to send nearly 100 vehicle frames from decommissioned armored vehicles.
Ukrainians are ready to take even junk, tear it apart, and make 1 out of 3 machines. But this is something that can protect our soldiers.
That's Oleksandra Ustinova, a leading Ukrainian parliamentarian, in an interview with CBC News last spring as she toured Canadian military bases.
There are a lot of stuff that can be donated, but is not for some reason. And I don't understand why, because, for example, Canada has a lot of armed vehicles.
Her pleas were evidently heard. However, the Canadian Army has hundreds of old armored vehicles it's prepared to scrap. Bisons, Coyote reconnaissance vehicles, and tracked personnel carriers, which the Ukrainians believe can be useful in one capacity or another. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
The 14-year-old accused in this week's deadly school shooting in Georgia will make his first court appearance this morning. He's charged with murder in relation to the deaths of 2 students and 2 teachers at Appalachia High School near Atlanta. Meanwhile, authorities have now also charged the boy's father. Freelance reporter Steve Futterman has the details.
One day after the deadly shooting took place, the 14-year-old suspect's father, Colin Gray, was arrested.
He is charged with the following: 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children.
Chris Hosey is the director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
A number of reports say the 54-year-old father bought the AR-style weapon used in the killings for his son as a Christmas gift last year. That was just months after authorities spoke to the father about shooting school threats made online by his son. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department recorded the interview.
You have weapons in the house?
I do.
Are they accessible to him?
They are. I mean, there's nothing loaded, but they are down. We do a lot of shooting. We do a lot of deer hunting. He shot his first deer this year.
And there are also reports today that the 14-year-old may have had a higher than normal interest in previous high-profile school killings. Investigators reportedly found writings in Colt Gray's bedroom referencing other mass school shootings. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
At least 17 students are dead after a fire at a boarding school in Kenya. More than a dozen others suffered serious burns. Police say the number of fatalities will likely rise. Officials say the fire broke out in the boys' dormitory Thursday night. Those killed were in grades 4 to 8. Here at home, as a new academic year begins at Ontario's McMaster University, 3 students are banned from some campus activities. As Justin Chandler reports, the move relates to their participation in a pro-Palestinian protest.
This has seriously dinged my productivity.
Rand Clayton says they've been banned from McMaster's campus unless they're attending classes.
I was unable to even access my own office for the entirety of this summer. PhD students don't get a summer break.
They're one of 3 students who say the university declared them persona non grata for their participation in a pro-Palestinian protest encampment this past spring. Protesters spent 3 weeks calling on the institution to divest from and cut ties with organizations that support Israel. McMaster told CBC it would not comment on individual cases. In a statement, it said students have the right to protest, but must do so in accordance with school policies. The school also says a persona non grata notice may be given to students who violate those policies and pose a potential risk to the McMaster community. They can be issued while a case is being investigated.
And if they were going to undertake an investigation, why it would take 2.5 months to do so?
James Turk directs the Center for Free Expression at Toronto Metropolitan University.
The investigation itself and the denial of access to university facilities is a form of discipline, even though they haven't been found guilty of anything yet.
Rolf Gerstenberger is the former president of United Steelworkers Local 1005. He says the campus protests are similar to those against the Vietnam War, which he participated in.
So the students here, instead of being persecuted, they should be commended for taking a stand.
The students say the university is dragging its heels on the investigation.
Come on, McMaster, move a little faster.
A group of McMaster faculty have written a letter opposing the ban. Justin Chandler, CBC News, Hamilton.
Statistics Canada is set to release the latest job numbers this hour, and they are expected to confirm a soft job market in this country, one where it's harder to find work, especially if you're a student. Anissa Dari has more.
So when I got the rejections, they were very disheartening.
Miranda Shirini graduated from journalism and English programs at Calgary's Mount Royal University in 2023. After that, about a year of struggling to find employment.
It was overwhelming. And also, too, I had student loans, so now they wanted their money back, so that was really stressful. So the pressure was on to keep on looking for a job.
She's not alone. The university's Director of Career Services, Sarah Imran, is seeing it across the board, whether students graduate from the humanities, sciences, or technical fields.
The market is not very favorable, so we hear from students who are applying multiple times, not getting callbacks. Hard to land an interview.
Imran says it feels like it's worse than it used to be for those who visit her office. And earlier this summer, Statistics Canada noted that the labor market was difficult for students in 2024 compared to previous years. But while young people face a worse job market than others, experts have broad worries.
I think the biggest concern to us is the increase in the unemployment rate that we've been seeing.
Taylor Schleich is an economist with National Bank in Toronto.
We're going to continue to see upward pressure on the unemployment rate. It probably will move somewhere close to 7% by the end of this year.
But back in Calgary, Miranda Shirini had some good news to share that bucked the trend.
I called my mom. And I told her that I have the job.
After a long wait, she's working in communications for an oil association. Anissa Dari, CBC News, Calgary.
An interest in railroads may not be something you'd expect from Air Canada, but the airline wants to be involved in the development of a high-speed rail link between Windsor, Ontario and Quebec City. As Jenna Benchetrit explains, that has industry experts divided.
From Germany to France, Air Canada already has intermodal partnerships in Europe, making it easier for travelers to integrate air and train travel. But its interest in a high-frequency rail project in Canada has raised some eyebrows.
Air Canada is trying to get a competitive advantage on other carriers.
Airline industry expert John Graddick says Air Canada is likely trying to glean the size of the rail market in a region where it operates flights.
And they're trying to keep that information proprietary, not sharing it with Flair or Porter.
Air Canada's potential participation in the rail project is another sign of the carrier being born on third base, said Eric Tanner, a vice president with Flair Airlines in Vancouver. And while he says Flair can't compete in that region,
if a high-speed rail was built, Air Canada would develop, partnerships, interlines, et cetera, with it that would further extend the competitive asymmetry that we see in Canadian aviation.
But Calgary aviation consultant Rick Erickson sees it differently. He doesn't expect smaller airlines to lose customers over Air Canada's involvement in the project. And should high-frequency rail come to Alberta and BC, regional carriers will probably manage fine.
The other airlines aren't anywhere equipped financially to be able to do this.
An Air Canada spokesperson did not respond directly to questions about competition. Jenna Benchitrit, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca, cbckidsnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We are live in downtown Winnipeg with our team at Information Radio. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. It's Friday. And at least we made the double digits this morning. We're at 10 degrees right now. Abby's in with the rest of the forecast in just a moment. This hour on the program, we are once again in a position in this city where we're finding ourselves trying to understand the independent investigation unit that oversees police investigations. And we're hearing criticism of police investigating police. As the IIU now investigates the death of a First Nations woman who died after being hit by a police cruiser, Tammy Bateman, there are now renewed calls once again to overhaul the police watchdog. Coming up, we're going to have a conversation with someone who has been studying this and specializes in criminology. She says big changes are needed to help rebuild trust with Indigenous communities. Stay tuned for that. In addition this hour to something of fun, at 7:40, we're going to meet a trio of perfect feline social media stars who are getting ready to shake a few paws with fans this weekend. So if you're a cat lover, you do not want to miss what's coming up right after 7:30 this morning. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who is here with our other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. A planned home for people recovering from addictions is meeting with opposition in Lindenwoods. The city approved earlier this year a conditional use application for Regenesis Center for Recovery to use a home in the area. The nonprofit organization would provide supervised live-in secondary care to 6 adults at a time. But more than 100 neighbors are not happy. They worry the center's too close to a school and a senior's home, and they say they will appeal. A decision is expected today in the trial of a corrections officer charged in the death of an inmate. William Walter Almo died in Headingley Correctional Center in 2021. Robert Jeffrey Morton has pleaded not guilty to criminal negligence causing death. We'll hear about what happened there in our next local news at 7:30.
Heather Wells, Abby has a fun question for this last day of the back to school week. Abby, what is it? What are we asking listeners to call us with?
If you could create a new subject, what would it be? Bonus points if it involves snacks.
It has to involve snacks.
Yeah.
Do you have an answer to that, Abby, since you're posing the question?
I think I'm just going to be more like a cook, Captain Cookbook.
I don't know what that means.
I would be having this class where I make snacks.
Oh, like you want to actually, that's your course, making snacks.
So it's like home ec, but only for snacks.
Only for snacks.
I like that. Yeah, okay. So if you could create a course, are we talking university course or high school course? I'm going to get into
across board.
Okay, just a school subject that doesn't exist. What would it be? That's a fun question for a Friday. Oh, Dylan's got his hand up. Yes, Dylan?
University or high school nap time.
Oh.
Because I feel like we waste nap time on kindergarten, and then you just don't get it when you need it.
So you're actually proposing that there's a break in the day where I'm totally on board with
Grades
that.
for successful napping.
Count me in.
I actually think there should be a course on how to nap. I cannot tell you how many conversations as a morning show host people have with me about sleep. A lot. How do you sleep? When do you sleep? When do you go to bed? Do you nap? How long? That's a course. There we go. We started
We
off.
could just have a spin to that. It might not just be involving snacks. It might just be a new course.
Snacks and naps.
Yeah.
788-3205. You can probably do better than we can, so call us. Abby, the weather today.
Yes, for today, we're not going to be feeling a lot of the heat. It will be coming sometime next week. But for today, still kind of cool. It feels like fall, I must tell you. That's what it feels like if you step outside. Right now, it is 10 degrees in the downtown. The warm spot in the province right now is Victoria Beach at 12 degrees, but Winnipeg is at 10. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds, a slight chance of showers this morning. Those fog patches clearing up, and we should have a great morning. Highs would be around 19, and down south, we're just seeing temperatures between 0 and 7 degrees.
All right, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything to report yet in traffic or on the morning commute, Dylan?
Well, you might be a little bit, not quite cold, but I mean, we're getting to that time where if you are an active commuter, you might want to start considering your wardrobe from the sounds of the temperature conditions. I know this morning coming in not bright and early, in the dark and early, it was a consideration today. So I guess we're hitting that time of year. On the roads, I mean, things are picking up. You're going to be noticing more traffic around this time, but so far, we haven't heard any calls, no stalls, or anything slowing you down. So, well, if you see something, let us know at 204-788-3093.
Well, we might be talking about the cooler weather this morning. However, think back to earlier in this summer. We certainly broke some heat records. And that wasn't just here. That was everywhere across Canada. Our world overall is heating up. And it does hit us where we live. Now, most of us are living in cities like Winnipeg, and the urban landscape we've created have an understanding that it both traps and amplifies heat, and that makes it hotter than the countryside around us. Quirks and Quirks is looking specifically at the problems and the solutions on a special program this week. It's a collaboration. It's part of Overheated. It involves 3 shows, What on Earth, White Coat Blackguard, and Quirks and Quirks on CBC, exploring how heat is affecting health, our cities, and our ecosystems. Quirks and Quirks host Bob McDonald. This is where you want to go to YouTube, radio listeners, because you want to see Bob. Quirks and Quirks host Bob McDonald joined me via Zoom to tell us all about it. Hi there, Bob.
Hi, Marcy.
So grateful to have you with us. Now, I understand that you're beginning, explaining why you guys are into this, and how heat is affecting all of us on 2 wheels, on a bicycle, right?
Yes, I got to ride a specially instrumented bicycle in downtown Montreal. Scientists at Concordia University took a regular bicycle, they put a basket on the back of it, and then on this basket are 3 poles that stick straight up to about head level. They form a triangle. And then on top of that is an instrument that looks like a stack of upside down dinner plates. They're white. And it's got an instrument inside that measures air temperature at head level. So they want to find out what we feel as we walk around the cities. And it has another instrument that points up and looks at the amount of sunlight coming down. Another one that looks down at the ground and measures the ground temperature, which is usually hotter than the air, and a GPS to tell where you are. So I got to ride this thing around downtown Montreal, and I went to different environments. It was kind of neat. We started out in a park that had lots of trees, and so it's naturally cooler. I'm sure you've had that experience. You go from under a tree out into the sunlight, you feel the difference. Well, this thing was measuring a difference of like several degrees from one street to another, and they're trying to build up a detailed map of Montreal, where the hot spots are. And, a change of a few degrees doesn't sound like much, but our bodies really feel that, and we respond to it. And that's what White Coat Black Art's looking at, is what it does to the body. So, yeah, I got to drive around. I got some strange looks from some of the people thinking, who is this guy riding around with this weird thing on the back of a bike?
I'm guessing you did.
In the name of science, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing you did. Now, you've alluded to this. Why are those cities hotter than rural environments?
Well, it's the heat island effect, and it comes from the fact that we build tall buildings and we cut down all the trees and we replace them with concrete and asphalt that absorb heat. And not only that, but they hold on to the heat overnight. So if you have a sequence of hot days, it doesn't cool off at night, so it accumulates. It just keeps getting hotter and hotter, and it creates this heat bubble that rises up over a city. So it's a microclimate. So the cities are actually generating their own weather, and that's the issue: is that how much concrete do we have? How much compared to how much green space do we have? And that'll affect the temperature of the city.
I know that John Sauter, a longtime meteorologist here in Manitoba, would often talk about the heat island effect when we were doing our temperatures. So what's the price we pay for all this, though?
It's a lot. It's a lot. I was stunned when I looked at some of the statistics. Last year in Europe, 47,000 people died from heat. 47,000 people in Europe. In the United States, it's around 10 to 11,000 per year. And here in Canada, we don't have good stats, but in British Columbia, where I live, when we had the heat dome in 2021, more than 600 people died just in British Columbia. So you multiply that across our 10 provinces, it's around 6,000 to 8,000 people a year. So it's the number one killer. It's the number one environmental killer. Heat now beats out hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, all those natural disasters that we see. Heat is now the number one killer, and it's a silent killer, and it's a very serious one.
So obviously you said you explored solutions as well. Can you share, a little bit of some of the solutions that you're looking into on this special series of programs?
Yeah, fortunately, it's not all bad news. Brian Goldman on White Coat Black Art, he looks at the effect on the body, and it's amazing what it does. But we also, there are solutions out there. Greening up the cities, putting more trees as best we can, including on roofs. You have green roofs, which can cool. You can put solar panels on roofs, which not only provide shielding, but they generate electricity. You can change the color of roofs. If you need to redo the shingles on your roof, ask for lighter colored tiles instead of the black ones. There was a neat thing they did in Montreal called a green alleyway. It was this narrow alley, but they planted these big planters with trees in them. It made it not only cooler, but it was a nicer place to be. In Vancouver, I was in a park where they had a creek that had been covered over by pipeline, and they just uncovered it. They turned it back into a creek again, and it was a park. It was this meandering creek that went through a park. There were paths on either side of it. People were walking their dogs, riding their bicycles. Tree covered. There was a playground there. So it's that kind of thing we can do, is to green up our cities and try to adapt them to this warmer world that we're living in.
It's interesting because some people might think, how much of a difference could that possibly make? Having one alley filled with planters and such. But when you talk about the accumulating factors, it can make a huge difference.
Sure, there are a lot of alleyways in cities, we could do that. And it's little stuff like that. It adds up. And the scientists that I'm talking to, they're actually optimistic that there are solutions out there. And it's different for each city. Winnipeg's going to have its own issues. Toronto's going to have others, Vancouver, whatever. But we can look at that and say, what can we do? But let's actually implement it. Let's really do this and green up our cities, because the scientists realize that climate change is real. It's going to take time for us to flatten the curve of climate change. Like, remember they were telling us about COVID with that, we got to flatten the curve. Well, it's going to take a while before we do that. So we have to adapt to a warmer world. So there are solutions out there. Let's look at it. It's a serious health issue. It's not just an environmental issue. It's a human health issue. So let's get at it.
Can I ask you before you go this morning, Bob, how seriously, in your view, are researchers taking the problem?
They're taking it very seriously because they recognize that it's a serious problem, but they're not just pointing to problems; they're pointing to solutions, which I'm all for. And we also have energy solutions as well. I mean, if you don't mind crass self-publication, my latest book, The Future is Now: Solving the Climate Crisis with Today's Technologies. We have green technology available. We already know how to do that, so we can reduce our carbon emissions, which is at the fundamental basis of all of this, and move ahead as well. So it's a multifaceted problem, and there are multiple solutions to it, and how we deal with energy, how we deal with heat, how we deal with our cities, and green them up. So the solutions are there. I'm optimistic.
Thanks for being with us this morning, Bob. Always nice to see you, and thanks for wearing the uniform blue shirt. We matched today. Take care. Thank you.
Okay, Marcy. Bye.
Host of Quirks and Quarks, and you can hear the Overheated special coming up tomorrow at noon wherever you get your podcasts. So White Coat Black Art, What on Earth, And also you can hear Quirks and Quarks and how they handled the discussion about heat. We have coming up sports, so stay tuned. We're going to tee up the Banjo Bowl, which is also coming up tomorrow. But right now we have a beautiful song about flowers, and I even have something to show you. Aren't these beautiful? These were picked, actually, all the gorgeous local flowers that people are harvesting this time of year in their gardens. This tune is called Water the Flowers and Pray for a Garden. It's from Valley.
No one knows, no one cares. I keep dressing up myself, ain't going nowhere. No one loves me like I do. And to think there was a time when that was you. I won't quit this time. I won't let it in. I guess that I didn't laugh and cry about my problems, and honestly I don't know how to solve them. I water the flowers and pray for a garden, 'cause honestly I'm just all out of options. I showed up, cut my hair, threw a party for myself, but no one's there. No one hates me like I do. Driving past your house, I'll blow a kiss for you. Ooh, I'm such a sentimental, cynical head in the clouds. I guess that I didn't laugh and cry about my problems, and honestly I don't know how to solve them. I water the flowers and pray for a garden, 'cause honestly I'm just all out of options. It's always the right time, just something I ask, 'cause it's always the right time. Close to the sunlight, it's always the right time, just something I ask, 'cause it's always the right time.
From the new album of the same name, that's Valley with Water the Flowers and Pray for a Garden. And I was showing gorgeous flowers to our YouTube audience, and I neglected to tell you radio listeners we were looking at snapdragons and daisies, all the lovely flowers you might be cutting from your gardens at this time of year. It is 7:25 a.m., and let's turn our attention to something very different. The Banjo Bowl is coming up. Scott Regere's here with Sports Now. Hello.
Hey there, Marcy.
What are you looking forward to most ahead of tomorrow's game? Especially after last week's tight one.
Well, this is it, right? Zach Collaros is what I'm looking forward to most. He was a full participant in practice, coming off of that nasty hit to the head from Miles Brown, something Miles Brown was not suspended by the league for. So it's up to the Bombers on the scoreboard to exact their own revenge for that incident. I think Collaros, he was lights out, so to speak, before he was hit in the first half last week by Brown. He was leading the Bombers to a seeming rout of the Riders in Regina before he got hurt. So let's see what he can do. It looks like the Bombers are going to be without Adam Bighill, one of their best defenders. The linebacker was hurt in the last game, and we're not hearing a lot from the club, but it does look like it could be serious, possibly a season-ending ailment for Bighill. So that's obviously a big missing part. One of the best loved players on the team. But Zach Collaros, he's looking forward to the game. So is Brady Oliveira, the star running back, the Winnipeg native who calls it the best game of the year.
I started playing football when I was about 13 years old. And then when I was, at that age, I started watching football. I started watching the Bombers and watching greats like, Milt Stegall, Charles Roberts. And so, yeah, I definitely love my Bombers. Grew up a Bomber fan. So that's kind of a little backstory of it.
Yeah, he met Buck Pierce as well when he was just a kid, Brady Oliveira, and that's now his offensive coordinator. So all kinds of ties there. 3 o'clock kickoff tomorrow. It's long been a sellout, the Banjo Bowl. And really, for me, if the Riders are beaten here, they've already lost 6 straight games. If it's a 7th, I think the blue and gold can put the green and white behind them for the rest of the season and focus on the other teams in the West. But we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Oh, go ahead. Get too far. The weather's going to be great, by the way. 23 degrees and sunny.
Perfect.
Good football weather. Just a light wind. All right. Canada's heading into the final weekend now, the Paralympic Games, of course. And we have, I guess we're going to end the final weekend really on a high, but both in the pool and then also on the track when you're looking at events coming up.
Great pace. Yes, Lakatos is pushing away, coming down the home straight. Peo has nothing. A superb race run here by Brent Lakatos to take the gold. Peo in second.
The sound of Quebec wheelchair racer Brent Lakatos winning the 800 meters yesterday, Marcy. He is one of the country's most decorated Paralympians ever, but this is actually just the second time he's won a gold, and the first time since the Rio Games in 2016. He was asked about that trackside.
It feels absolutely amazing. It's been 8 years, so many silver medals. To finally get to the top again, to hero Canada, it's absolutely amazing. It's unbelievable.
Lakatos now with 13 career Paralympic medals, something swimmer Aurélie Rivard can also claim after she won gold yesterday in the 400-meter freestyle. As a whole, Canada has 20 medals, one shy of the total at the last Games in Tokyo. We still have 3 days of competition to go in Paris. One of the reasons I think we're seeing an improvement overall in performance from the Canadian athletes, the payment for medals. With tech entrepreneur Sanjay Malevia helping foot the bill, Paralympians are receiving $20,000 for gold, $15,000 for silver, and $10,000 for bronze. It is the same compensation that Olympians receive, an important, if overdue, message to kids with disabilities across the country. And the Paralympics wrap up on Sunday, Marcy.
And briefly before you go, the Americans continue to impress at the U.S. Open, hey?
Yeah, Jessica Pegula did it. The Buffalo Bills owner's daughter won yesterday and made her way through to a final. She has never done that before, and she'll play against Arina Sabalenka of Belarus, who is promising all fans free margaritas if they support her rather than the New Yorker Pegula. I don't know if that'll be incentive enough, but we shall see.
All right, Scott, have a great weekend.
You too.
Still ahead on the show this morning, local cats who are social media stars and where you can meet them. How's that to keep you tuned in? Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 10 degrees in downtown Winnipeg. Mix of sun and clouds today. Still feeling that cool autumn air. A high of 19 today. We do warm up for the weekend. A planned home for people who are recovering from addictions is meeting with opposition in Lindenwoods. The city approved a conditional use application for Regenesis Center for Recovery to use a home in Lindenwoods earlier this year. The nonprofit organization would provide supervised live-in secondary care to 6 adults at a time. However, more than 100 neighbors are not happy. They worry about the center's closeness to a school and a senior's home, and they say they'll appeal. Still, the center's executive director, Cindy Foster, is optimistic.
In all honesty, it's a small vocal minority that are feeling some concerns about Regenesis Center opening in Lindenwoods. We actually have a lot of support from not only community members in the area, but across Winnipeg and across the province.
Foster says the center previously had canvassed some people in Lindenwoods, giving them months to reach out with any concerns about the recovery center, but she says they didn't hear any concerns during that time. The appeal hearing is set for September 11th. The Conservatives have a strategy to take Elmwood-Transcona away from the NDP in this month's by-election. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the strategy involves tying the New Democrats to the Liberals.
For weeks, Conservative by-election signs in Elmwood-Transcona have featured NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in a handshake with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This is an NDP stronghold, but the Liberals are unpopular, and the NDP spent the past 2 years in a confidence and supply deal that effectively kept Trudeau in power. Singh ended that deal on Wednesday, but the Conservatives are sticking with the strategy. Their candidate Colin Reynolds asked his NDP opponent Leela Dance on Thursday if she'll vote against the Liberals in a confidence motion. Dance says that's something she won't determine in advance.
I'm going to do things issue by issue.
U of M political scientist Roy Scoop says the Conservative strategy is interesting. He doesn't often see one party compete against another by tying them to a third.
It's kind of a particular strategy at this moment in time.
Advanced polls open today in Elmwood, Transcona. Election day is September 16th. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A decision is expected today in the trial of a corrections officer charged in the death of an inmate. William Walter Amo died in Headingley Correctional Centre in 2021. Robert Jeffrey Morden has pleaded not guilty to criminal negligence causing death. An altercation that started as a standoff between the inmate and corrections officers in a common room of the provincial jail west of Winnipeg ended with a 45-year-old inmate being sent to hospital in medical distress. A video shown in court showed Amo saying, "I can't breathe," more than 20 times while under restraint in the prone position. He was taken off life support a week later and died. Manitoba's chief medical examiner ruled his death a homicide. Canada is making another contribution to the Ukrainian war effort. Defense Minister Bill Blair says it includes further details of a pilot training program, along with the donation of used military hardware Ukrainian forces can use for spare parts. He says it's all part of Canada's long-term commitment.
Victory in Ukraine is not just merely restoring their sovereign borders and driving Russia out of Ukraine, but it's also creating the circumstances that would allow Ukraine to be secure and safe and prosperous in the future. And in order to do that, it does require a longer-term investment in military capability so that they can defend themselves.
Blair is in Germany for a meeting of allied defense ministers. You can hear more on this story and other national and international news on World Report at 8. A new book published by Brandon University aims to start a conversation among students about sexual violence. The graphic novel It Happened to Me and It's Not Okay is being released during what is called Red Week, a time when students are most at risk of sexual violence on campus. Jessica Laxdal at Brandon University says the red zone is the first 6 to 8 weeks of the school year. Those weeks account for about 50% of reported sexual violence on campus.
When we think of sexual violence, we often go to the extreme, but when we look at under the umbrella, it covers many different areas. So I think for those who have experienced it, it really can help normalize and validate what happened to them is wrong, and hopefully it brings the courage for them to speak out and get that support that they need.
It Happened to Me and I'm Not Okay officially launches Tuesday at Brandon University's Evans Theatre. And this summer was Earth's hottest on record. So says European Climate Agency Copernicus. It defines summer as all of June, July, and August. The agency says even though La Nina is set to cool parts of the Central Pacific this year, the entire year is also on track to reach a new heat record. You can find more news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, Eddie, Emmy, it's time for our regional forecast now from CBC.
Today we'll see a mix of sun and clouds with fog patches clearing up in most of the regions this morning. Temperatures will range from 19 to 27 with breezy conditions in some areas and mostly sunny weather expected for tomorrow. Winnipeg, the sun is already making its appearance. You can see it in the background there. 10 degrees at this time. Expect a mix of sun and clouds throughout the day, a slight chance of showers, and we'll get to a high of 19. Brandon is currently clear at this time, 5 degrees. Today we'll see mostly sunny conditions, some fog patches experienced earlier that will be clearing up as you get into your morning, and you'll see highs of 20, though you're going to cool down to 3 today. Thompson is seeing lingering fog patches here and there at 0 degrees. Expect a mix of sun and clouds today. As the fog clears, you get to a high of 16. Further north in Churchill, it is 3 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions at this time, though that will transition to mainly sunny conditions. Then by the afternoon period, we'll see some breeze coming from the south. Highs will be near 17. Dauphin is clear at 5 degrees at this time. Today's forecast includes mainly sunny conditions with fog patches clearing for that region. Highs near 19 degrees, and then for tonight, some Some few clouds would roll in. You cool down to 6 degrees. Gimli is at 8 and partly cloudy. For the Interlake region today, expect sunny conditions mixed with clouds, a slim chance of showers sometime this morning. Some fog patches you noticed earlier would be clearing as you get late into the morning period. We're going to see highs near 19. Steinbach partly cloudy at 7. Today it's going to start sunny, then some clouds would roll in, a slim chance of showers. Expected to clear up by the afternoon period with fog patches dissipating also this morning. Highs near 19, and Morris is already sunny at this time. We are at 7 degrees in that region. For the Pembina Valley region, you should see more clear conditions. I know some people reported fog patches earlier. That's dissipating. You'd get to a high of 19. In summary, it's cool 10 downtown. Will stay cool throughout the day, much like yesterday, Mercy. And then we'll see more of a mix of sun and clouds and chance of showers and high of 19 today. Though we do warm up for the weekend.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Yeah, yesterday was strange with that little pocket showers that poured here at CBC.
I was like, what?
I know.
Just happened.
I drove home. It's like 10 minutes max, and I had nothing. So, all right, let's get into what's happening on the commute because Dylan did get a call.
Yes, we heard that lights are flashing red at the intersection of Kimberly and Henderson. According to our caller, Carrie, that's causing some mild delays for southbound traffic at this time. Not huge backups, but of course people are proceeding through that intersection much slower than normally. Lights are flashing red. Treat that as an always stop and proceed with caution going through. Anything else you're seeing out there, you can give us a call at 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Dylan. Well, next on the show, it is an event for cats and the humans that love cats. Meow Mania is a cat-themed market and adoption fair. It's happening tomorrow at Deer Lodge Community Club. But here's the fun part. There's going to be some local celebrity cats or I'm not going to be able to say this. Celebrikitties, if you will. They're going to be there for a special meet and greet. Kitties like Gracie the Wobbly Warrior, Roman the Wobbly Kitty, and Littlefoot. They all have a rising presence on social media. CBC Manitoba's community reporter Shanley Vidal had the chance to meet the famous felines as they were gathering for a photo shoot.
There we go.
Wow.
Star. Hi, I'm Sabrina Nan. I am the sponsor and host of Meow Mania. I'm a cat photographer. I love photographing cats, but I photograph mostly dogs. So it was really exciting for me to be able to put on this event because I am truly a cat person at heart. Meow Mania is a market for cat people. Cat people and cats. It's also an adoption fair, and then we also have some local feline celebrity guests as well. Ronan the Wobbly Kitty, Gracie the Wobbly Warrior, and Littlefoot.
My name is Jill Bristow, and I am Gracie's mom. Gracie is 2 years old. She actually has severe cerebellar hypoplasia. She, being severe, is unable to sit, walk, or stand on her own. Gracie has a 4-wheeled wheelchair to give her support so that she is able to stand.
Tell me about Gracie's personality.
So Gracie is very, very sweet. She is just loves to be loved. So she's kind of a mottled black-orange, and she has some white on her. She's about 7 pounds, so she is very small.
Girl, oh, look at you.
Oh, standing up nice and tall.
So nice.
Stay there.
She's like, I will look everywhere but at the camera.
There we go.
She's making a name for herself.
She is, yeah.
Some local celebrity cat.
She is, yeah. She is well known. It's neat when we go places and people are like, oh, is that Gracie? For her second birthday, I was asked by someone to create an Amazon wish list. Loads of gifts from Spain, Amsterdam. I'm still blown away by it. The fact that people are just so generous and just love her and they have never met her.
Okay, we're gonna photograph Ronan just over here.
Okay.
In his natural habitat.
The couch is his natural habitat.
Yes, the bed and the couch.
My name is Joanne Thong Pang. I'm the fur mom of Ronan, the Wobbly Kitty. He is an 8-year-old cat with cerebellar hypoplasia, just like Gracie. And he also has a heart condition. Oh, yeah. He's very friendly, and anybody could just pick him up, and he just wouldn't care, really. He, laying on his bed, he's an orange and ginger cat. I guess what people know him for is his tongue sticking out a lot. So that's what he's doing right now. Is that because of a condition? I don't really know. It's just something he does. I think it's more when he's relaxed, it sticks out, and when he's even more relaxed, it just really sticks out.
Ronan, what's this?
Ronan.
Hello. Here we go.
Ronan has a social media presence. And,
Yes, he does.
You know, you're part of that as well.
Yeah.
What kind of reactions have you gotten from people?
It's funny, like we had, like years ago when he was like maybe 2 years old, we had a local school, and I forgot what grade, but the whole class made birthday cards for him, and they sent it over. He also had like, I guess like a birthday cards for Ronan kind of drive type thing. And he had cards from like all over the world, from like Australia, Austria, Germany, like in the States, across Canada. To me, like he's perfect in my eyes. And he's like my best friend, and we depend on each other. So like if I'm not with him, he gets a little fussy, and I have a hard time sleeping if he's not with me. So yeah, he's my other half, besides my husband.
Go.
Your butterfly.
Good job.
Yeah.
I'm Harlan Mitchell. I'm Littlefoot's cat mom. He's sweet and spicy. He is part Maine Coon, a cat that we actually found in a ditch when he was 2 weeks old.
How is Littlefoot doing now?
He's great. He's healthy. He has all the food he wants, and he's a little bit famous.
So tell me about Littlefoot's social media presence.
Yeah, well, we just started posting, videos and pictures of him because we thought our friends and family might get a little tired of seeing so much of him on our accounts. And his reels just started to pick up and started to get a lot of views, and now he's got 34,000 followers. A lot of his fans love that he was rescued so little, that he was given a chance. We say he's gone from ditches to riches.
Is he growling?
Yeah, he growls, he barks sometimes, he is quite vocal. He's black and fluffy, he's got a puffy tail, he's got big yellow eyes and tufts on his ears. He wears a bow tie most of the time. He likes to go for a ride in the stroller, so you might see him around town. He's living a very happy life, even though he's cranky. Always growling.
I think we got good.
He likes to be admired, not so much handled, I would say. Enjoyable.
A true diva.
Oh yeah, exactly. Definitely a diva. Ball of sunshine.
You hear that little low growl. You might have been watching it on YouTube as well. And if you haven't been on YouTube on Information Radio, our CBC Manitoba channel that carries our show, go there and check it out. You can go back and see all these celebrity kitties. Some of them knew they're famous. Ronan was like laying out there like, I'm a bit of a big deal. You can see them at this event. So this Meow Mania market's happening on Sunday afternoon at Deer Lodge Community Club. And thanks to CBC Manitoba's community reporter, Shanley Vidal, for visiting and bringing us the story about the celebrity cats.
Psst. Hey, Tiger.
Yeah, polar bear?
Is everyone gone?
You bet.
Let's party!
When the Assiniboine Park Zoo closes, the party starts. Brew at the Zoo is back September 13th. Local brewers, live music, one great night. Brew at the Zoo, proudly sponsored by CBC.
Hey, settle down, monkeys.
Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
Getting a bit brighter in the downtown now. It's 10 degrees and mainly sunny. Today we're going to have a mix of sun and cloud. There's a 30% chance we'll see some showers today. We'll see if that comes like pop-up showers like yesterday was so strange. They were just really isolated. A high of 19 degrees, though, is what we're expecting in the city today. And then clear into tonight, a few clouds into tonight, and a low of 6 degrees in Winnipeg. Well, up next on CBC, how can Manitoba's police watchdog build trust with Indigenous communities? That question is once again front and center in our community after the death of Tammy Bateman. The Independent Investigation Unit, or the IIU, is investigating her death. Her sister says that Bateman was a member of Rosa River Anishinaabe First Nation, and she was hit, as you likely know, by a police cruiser earlier this week. Now, very little is known about the details of how that happened, the collision. As advocates anxiously await the results of the investigation into her death, there are tensions rising once again as well, as we saw from the rally at Portage in Maine this week. Community members are looking for accountability. They say the Independent Investigation Unit, the IIU, needs a complete overhaul. Vanessa Gamblin, also known as Osa Muskweswe, Musqueam attended a vigil for Bateman, and she spoke with CBC's Brittany Greenslade there. I just want to play part of this in case you missed it. She was specifically looking at how more Indigenous representation is needed within the IIU.
So when the systems are being applied for Indigenous people, they're still designed by colonization practices. So to me, you're colluding with colonization. And when you're speaking for a sister such as Tammy, that is not our ways. That is not our sovereign ways. That's not our treaty ways. That is not the way our Mother Earth speaks. And so now that these things are occurring, we need to do it our ways. And if they're saying they're going to do IIUs with an Indigenous woman, and this is our thing, we're based upon matriarch. It's not a patriarch system. It's not a colonial system. It's none of that. We really live by the trees. She's our boss. The grass is our boss. The earth is our boss. The wind is our boss. The moon is our boss. That she's coming to do her work. The sun is our boss. Not the IIU people. Canada needs to get out of the way. Province of Manitoba needs to get out of the way. City of Winnipeg needs to get out of the way. For Indigenous people to do our work. So it needs to be led our ways.
So that is Vanessa Gamblin in conversation with CBC's Brittany Greenslade. Now, before I turn my attention to our next guest, I want to give some context here, because if you have not been following, like I have been sitting here for 20 years covering this, we have been calling for overhaul. Pardon me, the community has been calling for overhaul in Manitoba of the IIU for many, many years. And there was a special report in 2021 on the 30th anniversary, 30 years since the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry was written. Co-commissioner of that inquiry was Murray Sinclair, former Senator Murray Sinclair. And we did a feature interview with him just 3 years ago, asking all about the IIU. You can find it on our website, and you can find it in our archives for CBC. Murray Sinclair says Manitoba's independent investigation unit is neither independent enough nor transparent enough to properly investigate police-involved fatal shootings. As a result, the former Associate Chief Judge of Manitoba said to CBC he does not trust any of the recent rulings made by the IIU. Again, this was a special report we did 3 years ago talking about this. And the AJI 30 years ago had 296 recommendations about how to improve things. And yet here we are 3 decades later. Now, we did reach out, I should note, to the province, and the province says it's in the process of hiring 2 Indigenous senior investigators in the IIU. Those positions have not been filled yet. To talk about the importance of Indigenous representation, Nicole Murdoch is with us via Zoom. She's been listening in. She herself is Cree and Anishinaabe, a student who specializes in criminology and Indigenous studies at the University of Winnipeg, and also a member of Fisher River Cree Nation. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much, Marcy. Good to see you.
So what is your reaction to now calls once again for the IIU to change, to be overhauled?
I mean, it's incredibly frustrating because, like you said, you have been around also kind of at the forefront of this conversation, hearing these calls, talking to the experts, talking to people who have been on the ground for many years, asking that the IIU be overhauled, especially when it comes to Indigenous death and Indigenous violence. For myself, the IIU has very much been kind of at the focus of a lot of my study and a lot of my interest, and again, frustration as a community member, not only as an Indigenous community member, but as a member of this city. This is something that has been ongoing, and to see it now once again be at the forefront of conversation, I'm glad that this conversation isn't going away, but it is frustrating that it continues to happen without the change, I think, that is not only being called for, but is required.
Now, one aspect specifically of the call to action, as I mentioned, that advocates are making is to have Indigenous investigators in the IIU. And I just explained that there's a call out to have those positions filled. In your view, what difference would that make?
Well, first and foremost, I do think it is important to once again honor the work that has come beforehand from leaders like former Senator and Co-Commissioner Murray Sinclair, who's very much been an inspiration to the path that I have chosen for my own career. But also, these findings continue to come out in inquiries and reports, such as the final report for the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And this remains something, this being representation within the IIU, representation or at least oversight by Indigenous people, especially when it comes to Indigenous death. This was something that was called for in Call to Justice 5.7 in the National Inquiries Report. And that is something that guides not only my work because of all of the voices of families, of community members, of experts who have been leading the way for years. They have written, they have recommended. I do believe we are now in the implementation stage because we cannot wait any longer because these issues continue to happen. We have to start taking action and making these changes and seeing it come into fruition.
Is there hope right now because we're about to have a new police chief that whoever that person is also going to maybe look at some of the systemic changes that some community members have also been, seeking?
To be quite honest with you, Marcy, as hopeful and optimistic as a person as I am, this is also where my disciplines kind of collide. And I do look at the overhaul of policing within itself as a system from more of a criminologist's perspective. So while, yes, of course, I advocate for representation and Indigenous peoples and what we have asked for, I do also look at how effective is it to have police investigating police when it comes to oversight, when it comes to accountability, which is very much a principle of Indigenous ways of knowing and being. How does that play out in the system as it exists today? So I don't necessarily look at this as just a perspective of Indigenous investigators, but I do also look at it as civilian investigators with no prior connection to law enforcement and no history or connection there in order to have investigations not be conducted by police. Toward police.
What is currently happening might have listeners thinking about the death of Aisha Hudson, who was, of course, the Indigenous teenager who was killed by police in 2020 after an incident. Now, the IIU did investigate her death and did not lay charges against the officer involved. When you think about Tammy Bateman's investigation, as we're about to have this begin, what can be learned from the Hudson investigation in your view, and in terms of what details might have been missing or what things you hope might go differently in this investigation? What would you say?
First and foremost, thank you very much for bringing attention to Aisha Hudson and her family. I do think one of the primary concerns also from the Indigenous community is that while we're talking about these very important issues like the IIU or policing and whatnot, we do also need to remain very firmly grounded and rooted in the memory of the women who we have lost, whether it be Aisha Hudson or most devastatingly now, Tammy Bateman. And there are significant differences in between these two tragedies in the sense that, again, as the investigation and reporting continues on this issue, I do not believe that we are looking at a conversation about appropriate or inappropriate use of force by police officers. But yet there is still the level of power that policing and police officers have, which brings the conversation still back around to the need for oversight and the need for accountability in what officers are doing and how they conduct themselves, knowing that they possess this level of power and authority in our society.
Going forward, what do you hope happens when it comes to how the police watchdog handles investigations?
My hope, I think, I do turn and I do look to the provincial government and legislation. I know some changes have been enacted very recently. However, it isn't enough. Again, these recommendations of what further needs to happen and what needs to change, they're here, they're written. What I do hope is that the provincial government enacts some of those legislatively. But I think hope that ideally we wouldn't have a need for oversight, but I do believe we always will within these systems that we're currently operating in. And regardless of how many bodies are represented on the IIU as investigators that are Indigenous, I do think the Indigenous principles and practices of accountability, of community safety, of looking out for one another and taking responsibility for our actions become focal to the IIU.
We'll have to leave our conversation there this morning. Nicole, thank you for weighing in.
Thanks a lot.
That is Nicole Murdoch, who is a Manitoban and a member of Fisher River Cree Nation, specializing in criminology and Indigenous studies, is what she's studying right now. In a statement to CBC, a government spokesperson did say that the IIU, said in this conversation, is currently comprised of employees from various backgrounds, including people of color and members of the Métis community. The statement went on to say, and the spokesperson added, quote, representation of First Nations persons on its investigative team is a priority. The IIU recently advertising a competition seeking Indigenous candidates for 2 senior investigator positions. These positions have not yet been filled, but it is anticipated they will be in the coming weeks. So that's a bit of added information and the end of the quote, by the way. It is 3 minutes now to 8 o'clock. If you want to read more about the Tammy Bateman, her death, the calls from community, and also what police have shared, cbc.ca/Manitoba for that ongoing team coverage. Speaking of team, Heather Wells is in with our news headlines now.
Good morning. A planned home for people recovering from addictions is meeting with some opposition in Lindenwoods. The city approved a conditional use application for Regenesis Center for Recovery to use a home in that area. The nonprofit organization would provide supervised live-in secondary care to 6 adults at a time, but more than 100 neighbors are not happy. They worry the center is too close to a school and a seniors' home, and they plan to appeal. The latest jobless numbers have just been released. Statistics Canada says the national unemployment rate increased to 6.6% in August, up from 6.4% in July, as students continue to face a difficult summer hiring season. We're going to hear the numbers from Manitoba coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
We've got lights flashing red at Kimberley and Henderson, so you can expect some delays for southbound traffic. 788-3093 if you want to reach us, and thank you so much for the calls. It is in Winnipeg now mainly sunny. The sun's up finally. It took a while, and it's pretty bright and beautiful, although chilly a little. 10 degrees is our temperature, and we're going to go for a high 19 today. Coming up on the program, we're going to talk more about back to school. It is challenging enough for students trying to make new friends at any new school. But imagine then you're new to Canada. We're going to talk to a settlement worker in the Pembina Trails School Division who works closely with some of those newcomer students about what supports are available and what their waiting list looks like.
Today on Q, it's showtime.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Beetlejuice, the long-awaited sequel is finally out. And to celebrate, I will talk to director Tim Burton and star Catherine O'Hara about recapturing the wild, improvisational magic of the original.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Of his Brampton, Ontario childhood to the best clubs in Europe to the World Cup. Atiba Hutchinson coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Canada's unemployment rate continues to rise. Statistics Canada has just released its latest job numbers, showing the rate moved up to 6.6% last month from 6.4% in July. Our senior business correspondent, Peter Armstrong, has more.
This is just the latest economic indicator that's flashing red. Sure, the economy is still adding jobs, but for almost a year and a half now, we haven't been creating enough jobs to keep up with population growth. So the unemployment rate keeps rising, up 0.2% in this report alone. That's a full 1.5% increase since April of 2023. And outside of COVID, this is the highest unemployment rate this country has seen since 2017. And I think most of us know the reasons why. The Bank of Canada has spent the last 2.5 years hiking interest rates with the express purpose of slowing the economy to try to get inflation back under control. Well, inflation is very nearly there, but all that momentum of all those rate hikes is still pushing the economy down. So now the Bank of Canada is in a race against time to try to cut rates, hoping it can help turn this economic story back around. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
RCMP in New Brunswick are conducting a manhunt. They're looking for 47-year-old Keith Martin, and they say he could be armed and dangerous. One person was killed, another injured yesterday on a First Nation on the shores of Miramichi Bay. Peter Cowan has more.
On Escanobinich First Nation, the roads are quiet. People's doors are locked. Police are telling everyone on the reserve, which is also known as Burnt Church, to stay inside while they search for their suspect. They're looking for 47-year-old Keith Martin. He has dark hair and was wearing a gray jacket and has a bandage and blood on his forehead. RCMP Corporal Hans Ouellette says they're hoping for help from the public.
We're trying to locate this individual, and we would like any help to locate him, as he is considered armed and dangerous.
It all started yesterday afternoon when they showed up to a home in the community. They found a 48-year-old man dead. Another man was injured and taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. That's when they started looking for Martin. Late yesterday, an alert asked everyone in the community to stay inside. Ariana Martin lives nearby.
Everybody around Burnt Church is definitely on their toes. You come on your property at any point in time, you may not notice, so that's definitely not something you want to be thinking about where you're cooking your supper.
Schools on the reserve and in nearby Neguac are closed today as a precaution as police continue their search. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
The 14-year-old suspect in the deadly shooting at a Georgia high school this week will stay behind bars. At his first court appearance this morning, his lawyer declined to seek bail for his client. Meanwhile, authorities have now also charged the boy's father. Freelance reporter Steve Futterman has the details.
One day after the deadly shooting took place, the 14-year-old suspect's father, Colin Gray, was arrested.
He is charged with the following: 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children.
Chris Hosey is the director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
A number of reports say the 54-year-old father bought the AR-style weapon used in the killings for his son as a Christmas gift last year. That was just months after authorities spoke to the father about shooting school threats made online by his son. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department recorded the interview.
You have weapons in the house?
I do.
Are they accessible to him?
They are. I mean, there's nothing loaded, but they are down. We do a lot of shooting. We do a lot of deer hunting. He shot his first deer this year.
And there are also reports today that the 14-year-old may have had a higher than normal interest in previous high-profile school killings. Investigators reportedly found writings in Colt Gray's bedroom referencing other mass school shootings. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
At least 17 students are dead after a fire at a boarding school in Kenya. More than a dozen others suffered serious burns. Police say the number of fatalities will likely rise. Officials say the fire broke out in the student dormitory on Thursday night. The private primary school is about 150 kilometers north of Nairobi. Police on the Chinese holiday island of Hainan are experiencing a powerful storm. Typhoon Yagi made landfall this morning after sweeping just south of Hong Kong. At least 5 people were injured when the storm hit there yesterday. Hundreds more had to hunker down in government refuge centers. Officials warn people on Hainan to stack sandbags outside their homes and reinforce their windows with tape. Canada is sending more military aid to Ukraine. Defense Minister Bill Blair made the announcement at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany, where he's meeting with allied defense ministers today. But while Canada is offering pilot training and decommissioned armored vehicles, Ukraine says what really counts is permission to use military Western weapons to strike deep inside Russian territory. Anna Cunningham has more.
They are suffering significant attacks from air bases and military installations located within Russia.
Defense Minister Bill Blair at the Ramstein talks in Germany. Also attending for the first time in person, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
We need to have this long-range capability not only on the occupied territory of Ukraine, but also on the Russian territory.
Canada agrees.
I think it's necessary to do what is required to enable Ukraine not simply to defend itself, but to prevail in this conflict.
But Blair notes Canada does not have the capacity to supply those long-range weapons. It is, however, sending over 80,000 surplus small unarmed air-to-surface rockets, plus 1,300 warheads, as well as decommissioned chassis from 29 armoured personnel carriers and 64 armoured cars, which the Canadian Armed Forces no longer use. It's all part of Canada's $389 million of military aid announced last July. This will be welcomed by Ukraine.
Putin wants more Ukraine to occupy than he wants security for Russia.
But Zelensky's message remains consistent. The long-range strike option, he believes, is the best way to pressure Russia to end this war. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Political activist Vladimir Kara-Murza thought that he would die in a Siberian prison, but last month he was freed, part of a secretive prisoner exchange involving the U.S., Russia, Germany, and at least 4 other countries. The deal may have saved his life. Now, Kara-Murza is sharing his story with the CBC's Briar Stewart in a Canadian exclusive. She joins me now from London. Briar, what did Kara-Murza tell you about this prisoner exchange? Did he have any idea it was going to happen?
No, John, he had no idea at all, not until the moment where the exchange actually began. I mean, he'd been sentenced to 25 years in prison for treason and spreading false information. He spent 11 months of that time in solitary confinement in Siberia. He spent most of his days in isolation trying to maintain his sanity until suddenly, in the early hours of the morning in late July, visitors arrived in the middle of the night.
When I'm suddenly woken up by this loud noise of the doors of my cell being opened and a group of prison officers bursting into the cell, and the senior officer came up to me and said, "You have 10 minutes to get up and get ready." And at that moment I was absolutely certain that I was going to be let out and be executed.
He actually thought he was going to be taken into the woods and shot. Instead, he was taken to the local airport. He was put on a commercial plane and taken to Moscow to another prison. And about 5 days later, guards came into his cell again. This time they were wearing black balaclavas over their faces. And they escorted him onto a bus where he saw other political prisoners. And that was the moment he knew that he was part of an exchange. They were taken to the airport and transported to Turkey. And after they got off the plane, they met with officials there, and a woman from the American embassy went up to him, handed him a phone and said U.S. President Joe Biden was on the line and that he was in the Oval Office with members of Kara-Murza's family.
When I heard their voices, there are no words in any language that I know that can describe the feeling.
So, Briar, what does Kara-Murza plan to do now?
Well, it's just been over a month since his release. He's reunited with his family, and he's now crisscrossing Europe, meeting with leaders, thanking them for their support. And he does plan to visit Canada soon, because while he was in prison, Canada's Parliament made him an honorary citizen to recognize the advocacy work that he's been doing to try and create a fair and free Russia.
I'm deeply humbled and deeply honored by this particular award, but I accept it not for myself, but on behalf of all of those people in Russia. The many, many people in Russia who are unjustly imprisoned by Vladimir Putin's regime for having spoken out against the war in Ukraine.
And Kara-Murza hopes that one day he will be able to return to Moscow, but that can only happen after Vladimir Putin's grip on power ends.
Briar Stewart in London. Thanks, Briar.
You're welcome.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Beautiful sunshine in downtown Winnipeg this morning. Welcome to Friday, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. You're listening to CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. The forecast in a moment. This half hour, we're also going to find out what they're asking on Radio Noon's call-in conversation. What's the question today? You can participate over the lunch hour live here on CBC. But on our show, we're going to have a conversation about back to school and trying to connect, trying to make friends. It's not always easy when you're a young student, but imagine being a newcomer starting in a new school in a new country with all kinds of different things in front of you. We're going to talk to a school settlement worker about meeting the needs of some newcomer and refugee students this fall. We're going to hear about resources out there, common issues, but also about their wait list. So one of the wait lists has 1,500 students waiting to connect. So what's the role of the community to fill some of those gaps? Stay tuned. That's coming up. First, though, Heather Wells has our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Fort Richmond mom is angry after her 2 children and 7 others were forced off their school bus at the wrong stops on the very first day of school. We're going to hear that story coming up. As well, advanced polls open today in the Elmwood-Transcona federal by-election. And the federal Conservatives have a strategy to take Elmwood-Transcona away from the NDP by tying the New Democrats to the unpopular Liberals. We'll hear some reaction to that in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
And next Thursday, I'm going to mention that we are live covering the by-election. Our community studio, we've invited all the candidates to be there, is the Elm in Elmwood. So the Elm Pizzeria and Cafe, they serve breakfast. We might even get tamales. It's at 163 Henderson Highway if you want to join us, just over the Disraeli Bridge there. So 163 Henderson, next Thursday. InfoRat's going to be live on location. If you want to write to us about your concerns or questions, if you live in that area, if you're voting in Elmwood Transcona, we'd love to hear from you. 788-3205 in advance of our live show. Right now, let's go to Abby with more details on the weather.
And the weather for that Wednesday is going to be a mix of sun and clouds, so it's going to be a good day.
Oh, Thursday, Abby.
Thursday, mix of sun and clouds.
Still?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thursday the
Excellent.
12th.
I love it. Today,
though it's not cool, warm outside, it is still cool. It sure feels like fall. It's going to be another cool day in the city. Right now, we are stuck at 10 degrees in the downtown, and the sun has made its appearance. We should expect a mix of sun and clouds, a slim chance of showers sometime later this morning, and the skies will clear up later on. The high will reach 19. For tonight, few clouds would remain, and then we cool off to 6 degrees. Tomorrow, mainly sunny, breezy conditions will come. In other regions, it's foggy in Thompson at this time at 0. Churchill is sunny at 5, and for the rest of the southern regions, we are seeing temperatures between 8 and 9. 8 in Dauphin, sunny, and then 9 in Morris. Gimli is at 10 at this time, a mix of sun and cloud, a slim chance of showers in the forecast. But right now, Winnipeg, it is 10 degrees.
all right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Dylan Longhurst has been directing the program and also covering the commuter line. What's up now?
Yeah, we're still watching Kimberly and Henderson, where lights we heard about a half hour ago were at an all red flash. It appears that is still the situation there, and delays are building right now. It's quite a bit backed up as people navigate through that intersection. Quite slow. Treat all red flashing intersections as an all-way stop. And yeah, expect southbound travel on Henderson today to be a bit slow, so maybe factor that into your commute if you are yet to leave. Anything else, of course, you're seeing out there on the commute, we'll be back one more time for more traffic updates, so you can give us a call at 204-788-3093.
Well, let's talk about, as mentioned, those supports and challenges for students who happen to be newcomers or refugees in our community. My next guest is Ilan Mueller. She's the team leader for the Settlement Workers in Schools, or SWIS program, with the Pembina Trails School Division. And she worked closely with newcomers and refugee students, and it's been busy. Just to reiterate, she says the wait list is currently 1,500 students this year. So we're going to hear more about that. I spoke with her earlier this week.
Good morning.
What kind of work do you do? What kind of supports and services do you offer specifically for newcomer students?
So in the Settlement Workers in Schools program with Needs Center, we are supporting kids to basically feel comfortable and confident in their new environment. So that can look like a lot of different things and how that plays out. So for example, we would meet with families in their home so they know who we are, and then we would meet with the kids in their schools to learn about what they enjoy, what their interests are, how are things going at school, are there things they're interested in getting connected to in their community, do they know who to ask if they need help when they're in schools, what are they nervous about, all those types of things. And from there, we would set goals together and then create a bit of a little plan. So it looks different from elementary school to high school, obviously, what those plans will look like. But that really guides our support then. So some kids would say, I would love to join a soccer team, but we don't know how to do that yet. So then we would help them get connected to the community center or the soccer club that they're nearest to. Or maybe they're just saying, I want to join this club at my school, but I don't know who to talk to. So our support can look very different. Maybe they're asking for help to make friends. They've been here for a few months and they still have no one to connect with. And so we could meet with them one-on-one or in a group to build some of those social skills, or maybe it's building some language pieces to say, this is how you can ask to play with somebody, or this is how you can join a group.
Do you follow them through the whole school year then? Is that something that you stay with the families that connect with you?
Yeah, a general timeline would be like from the time they arrive here, if we get connected to them that soon, then up to, let's say, 18 months for maybe a typical settlement journey.
You highlighted already some of the common or shared concerns that newcomer and refugee students might face with back to school. I want to sort of key in on the friendship piece. Do you get that question from kids at the younger grades, older grades?
Just in how to make friends, or for sure from elementary school to high school, because again, it depends on what what language level they're coming with. If they've got zero English, it is really hard to make friends in high school and junior high because you don't have that. Like, here, I'm going to throw a ball and hopefully you catch it and maybe we can play tag, and we don't need language for that. But when you're coming in at high school and you're feeling quite self-conscious and people are already established in cliques or in groups or in clubs, and you are like, how do I start talking to people when I don't have the language piece? That's really hard. Even when you do have language, it's hard to just break into new groups.
In terms of, I guess, being an ally, what would you say that maybe people should keep in mind?
Yeah, I would say just reach out, be a friendly face. Even if maybe you don't have any newcomer students in your class, if you see them in the hallway, smile and wave, or if there's a shared lunch space, go sit at their table. Anyone appreciates someone else bridging that gap of space to approach you and say hi. If you're in elementary school, inviting them to come play with you, asking questions, being curious.
How busy are you at this time of year?
September, we're helping with school registrations. So it's kind of busy in terms of connecting with the schools and then getting into those schools and starting to support kids as soon as possible. A lot of our Swiss staff are supporting over 50 students, and that's not, families. So it's lots.
That's big numbers.
Yeah, and often more than that. But we have a long waiting list of kids that need support.
How long is the wait list?
I want to say it's over 1,500, but I'm not sure if that's just students, not including their families. I'm not sure. I don't want to give you false numbers. But
what do you need in terms of support to try to catch up with that when you think about the students that you can't get to?
Yeah.
It must be very difficult for you given that you're in the work of helping.
Yeah. So the things that make a big difference when we can't be there like right away and they're on a waiting list. The things I love to hear when I reach out to a family who's been here for a number of months and we say, hey, sorry, we're just reaching out now, whatever, is they say, oh, yeah, we actually made a connection with a neighbor. Or, yeah, our school resource teacher actually helped us with this thing. Or our kids are making friends. Or one of my child's friends, their parents reached out and asked if we were interested in joining a sports team just like they are, and they helped us with that process. So I love when I see and hear about just organically the people in their spheres reaching out, being a good neighbor, the teachers. We have some really, really incredible teachers and school staff in Winnipeg.
What are some of the hurdles that people might not, think about?
Not every person who comes with a refugee background is struggling with the language. They might already speak English. But for those who are struggling with language pieces, it's so hard because it bleeds into so many different spheres. So it impacts making friends. It impacts just oftentimes your confidence in asking for help in class. If you're confused, but you don't want to feel stupid for asking a question that everyone else knows the answer to, then that doesn't feel great. Aside from language, that's just walking into a new environment. And so lots of our families have said, yeah, it's great. Maybe we're not being bombed anymore, or maybe we're not in these, direct conflict situations, or maybe it's not, they haven't come from a war-torn situation. But I miss that I know what to do. I miss the familiar. I miss that I know who to ask for help. And so that can be really challenging. And for kids who are dealing with the expectations of their parents and things from their home country, but then also trying to fit in at school and trying to merge the two and be true to themselves, it's a really complicated process. Yeah.
Is there enough training within schools to sort of keep up with all these varying needs and the growing numbers that we have in Manitoba?
Yeah, it really depends. Some school divisions have been having lots of newcomer kids the past years and have kind of been thrown into it and then are finding different ways and to support. We also partner with New Directions and do a Making Sense of Trauma workshop that is open to teachers. And other schools are just saying, we don't know what to do, but let's just start somewhere. And so maybe they're saying, we want to learn about all the different holidays that people are celebrating. We want to learn about the way that you dress or the food that you eat. And so come teach us something about that. So if you don't know where to start with being curious and asking questions and then saying, what do you guys need from us? How did you do things back home? This is how we do things differently, and learning from each other.
Lastly, if there are families listening that maybe didn't know there were supports such as yours available, even though you have a wait list, do they reach out to you, or are they identified through the school system, who you're going to connect with?
Yeah, it's both. And with our wait list, Whilst we are mandated from the government and our funders to kind of primarily support government-assisted refugees. But our website has lots of information, too, of how to get connected.
Can you leave us with the website?
www.needsinc.ca.
Thank you so much for coming in, Elan.
Thanks for having me.
That's Elan Mueller, the team leader for Swiss Settlement Workers in Schools program with Pembina Trails School Division. Now, if you do want to connect with them, as she mentioned there, the website is needsinc.ca. Swiss, by the way, has programs all across Canada, but it has partnered with Needs in Winnipeg in the Pembina Trails, St. James Assiniboia, Louis Riel, and the Winnipeg School Division as well. It is 8:22 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. Still 10 degrees in the city. And we have music next from a Winnipeg artist who is, well, probably best known as Tommy Fiel. But I'm talking about Tumiwa Omaleo. He's originally from Lagos, Nigeria, now lives here in the city. And the song we're going to play this morning is called Bedu, which is a ceremonial drum used in Nigeria. Sometimes, though, you also hear that used to describe some forms of Nigerian Afrobeats tunes. So here is Bedu.
If the gbedu no complete, I no feel love you like I want to. If the gbedu no complete, I no feel you like I need. Like I need. Richer in them myself, as I conquer waves, I slay the giants within my bed, towering tall over my faults, then reach for the life that I want. It's set to grasp when I can see or even talk. When my past and my fears choke me. Living in the war zone that I call my thoughts, with your hand to guide me. Now I don't feel lost. Perfect dedication to the one I love. Now I'm filled with questions. Who's that title for? My heart goes round and round in circles when I think of you and the smile you once wore. I know you want more than I give to you, but I'm gonna fight this war on my own and I'm sure. Because if the bed do no complete, I no feel love you like I want to. If the bed do no complete, I no feel you like I need. If the bed do no complete, I no feel love you like I want to. If the bed do no complete, I no feel you like I need. I no feel you like I need. I no feel you like I want. I no feel you like I need. I got days and I don't feel right, and I don't feel smart, and I don't feel strong. Better myself on my daily grind as I kick it back with the money you like. Show me your way with the chin style as I bring that smile I see for a while. Hitting that beat with the 4-4 count with your leg walk bounce, so you're doing alright. Now I give out for myself sometimes, and I'm torn in two, and I don't mean to. Double-edged sword in my time, if I don't act right, baby girl, you go cut you too. Going back and forth on the same old shit that I talk you through, now you're feeling blue. Now you're getting pissed on the side, making stand very much, baby girl, I got living in the war zone that I call my thoughts, with your hand to guide me. Now I don't feel lost. Perfect dedication to the one I love. Now I'm filled with questions. Who's that title for? My heart goes round and round in circles when I think of you and the smile you once wore. I know you want more than I give to you, but I'm gonna fight this war on my own and
So that is local Nigerian and Winnipeg artist, Afrobeats artist Tommy Feel, who you might have seen performing in community tunes called Bedu. Love it. Super fun. Feels like Friday, right? Well, it is not only any Friday. It's a Friday after the short week, after the long weekend, back to school, back to routine. But we're not done talking about summer. Lori Hoogstraten is here to tell us what the Radio Noon call-in question is.
Yeah, not done talking about summer. It's going to be a beautiful summery weekend. But we are talking a bit about something that might remind you of back to school. Remember going to school and you get that assignment, how I spent my summer holidays?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's what we were doing today. We want people to call and tell us how they spent their summer holidays, especially around Manitoba, but anywhere. Did you stay home in the backyard? Did you go to the Threshermen's reunion? Did you go to the folk festival? And did you discover, as we always say, the hidden gems of Manitoba? We're going to be talking to Kit Muir from Travel Manitoba. And she can tell us what's still going on out there and how the tourism industry has recovered or not. We'll ask her all those questions. And we want to hear from people. What was it like? Did they get on a plane, or did they hope to get on a plane and it never left? Or did they drive somewhere, bike somewhere? All those fun summer memories or horrible disasters. We'll take both.
All right. Thanks, Lori. So a reminder of the numbers, I guess.
Oh, yeah. 204-780-0893. Or you can text us at 204-588-7355. And if you want to leave a little voicemail, you can call 204-788-3797.
Do you want to answer the question before you go? Do you have a highlight from the summer this year?
Do I have a highlight from the summer? I think lying on the beach, looking at the clouds was pretty good for me.
Which beach?
At Lake Winnipeg.
Nice. Beautiful. Yeah, all right. Thanks, Lori. 12:30 to 1 o'clock. What's your summer memory? What'd you do? How'd you spend your summer? That is between 12:30 and 1 on the call-in on noon. Now, remember, you can also leave a message, 788-3797. And spoiler alert, they're allowing me to host noon next week. I'm looking forward to this. I'm doing double duty. I'm still doing morning, but I'm going to be doing the call-in and I'm going to be helping to host noon. So we're all kind of helping out and covering each other here. And I'm like, hey, maybe I can do the call-in. So we'll have to come up with some questions for next week. By the way, if you have some ideas for topics that you'd like on the call-in, please call us and leave them. And I will pass them along to the producer of Radio Noon, and we'll try to get those conversations covered on air. So what do you care about? What do you want to talk about? What do you think a call-in could be about? And remember, we always supplement that with someone that guides the conversation, whether it's an expert to analyze something or to give us some more information and help answer the questions. So what do you want you have any ideas for topics coming up on Radio Noon, or maybe topics that can go anytime? 788-3205. I know I've thrown a lot of numbers at you, but I'm going to give you our morning show listener line because that's where we can pull it off and pass it along to the producer. 788-3205. We all morning have been watching Henderson and Kimberley, lights in a four-way flash mode. There's been an issue there, and you still could be a little bit, if you're going southbound, a little bit delayed. But that may be cleared by now. 788-3093 if you want to reach us. Look, another number for you. Right now, though, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 10 degrees right now. Mix of sun and clouds today. We're keeping cool for your Friday, a high of 19, but we do warm up for the weekend. A Fort Richmond mom is angry after her 2 children and 7 others were forced off their school bus at the wrong stops on the very first day of school. Helena's Nicholson's 5 and 7-year-olds were supposed to be dropped off at their daycare, but despite repeated calls to the Pembina Trail School Division to ensure they would be taken to the daycare, she says they were dropped off by her house with no adult supervision.
And the bus driver, had a list that said where they were supposed to be dropped off and essentially forcibly made the children get off. I know that my 7-year-old said, we're not supposed to get off here. And the bus driver said, well, this is where my list says you are. You have to get off.
Nicholson says a neighbor spotted her kids on the street and phoned her. She says 7 other children who were also supposed to be dropped off at daycare were taken to the wrong places, including 2 who were dropped off on Pembina Highway. Nicholson says the division told her they were having issues with the new My Ride app. Now, in a statement, Pembina Trail School Division confirms the students were dropped off at the wrong locations. It says safety is the utmost importance, and what happened, it says, is unacceptable. A review of the incident is underway. The division also says the new software and My Ride app will bring added efficiency once it's running seamlessly. A planned home for people recovering from addictions is meeting a chorus of opposition in Lindenwoods. The city approved a conditional use application for Regenesis Center for Recovery to use a home in that area. The nonprofit organization would provide supervised live-in secondary care to 6 adults at a time. Now, more than 100 neighbors are not happy. They worry about how close the center would be to a school and a seniors' home, and they say they will appeal. Still, the center's executive director, Cindy Foster, is optimistic.
In all honesty, it's a small vocal minority that are feeling some concerns about Regenesis Center opening in Lindenwoods. We actually have a lot of support from not only community members in the area, but across Winnipeg and across the province.
Foster says the centre had previously canvassed some people in Lindenwoods, giving them months to reach out with any concerns. She says they did not hear any concerns during that time. The appeal hearing is set for September 11th. The Conservatives have a strategy to take Elmwood-Transcona away from the NDP in the upcoming by-election. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, that strategy involves tying the New Democrats to the Liberals.
For weeks, Conservative by-election signs in Elmwood-Transcona have featured NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in a handshake with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This is an NDP stronghold, but the Liberals are unpopular, and the NDP spent the past 2 years in a confidence and supply deal that effectively kept Trudeau in power. Singh ended that deal on Wednesday, but the Conservatives are sticking with the strategy. Their candidate Colin Reynolds asked his NDP opponent Leela Dance on Thursday if she'll vote against the Liberals in a confidence motion. Dance says that's something she won't determine in advance.
I'm going to do things issue by issue.
U of M political scientist Roy Scoop says the Conservative strategy is interesting. He doesn't often see one party compete against another by tying them to a third.
It's kind of a particular strategy at this moment in time.
Advance polls open today in Elmwood-Transcona. Election day is September 16th. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Canada's unemployment rate continues to rise. Statistics Canada says unemployment rose to 6.6% last month, up from 6.4% in July. The agency's labor force survey says the economy added a modest 22,000 jobs across the country last month. Now, Manitoba has among the lowest unemployment rate in the country, but the rate in this province also edged up to 5.8%. It had been 5.7% in July. A Brandon University professor wants to help students talk about sexual violence. She has written a graphic novel called It Happened to Me and It's Not Okay, sharing stories of sexual violence. Candice Waddell-Henowich shares the stories of 10 survivors and information about local resources. She wants the novel to be a resource used across Canadian university campuses.
We decided to try a graphic novel because it talks about different forms of sexual violence. It talks about consent. It talks about all those different terms that people might not want to talk about, but they can read it in here, and then if their experience resounds or that makes sense to them, then they can seek out support.
It Happened to Me officially launches Tuesday at Brandon University's Evans Theatre. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, let's thank people who work in our current affairs unit on all of our shows here at CBC Manitoba. Our associate producers in unit, Abby Adeyemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Kalkadan Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Jim Agapito, May McKillop, Bruce Layden, Marshall Hodgins, and Dylan Longhurst. Our community reporters, Shanley Vidal, hosts in unit, Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundal, and Lori Hoogstraten this week on Noon. Producer in unit is Wendy Parker. Our YouTube producer is Kevin Ipatebo. Nellie Gonzalez is the show producer in our current affairs unit overall. And Leif Larson is senior producer of audio here. Thank you, everyone, for your work this week. Appreciate you. And thank you to all of our guests. I always like to thank the guests that joined us this morning. And thank you for listening. Well, we're getting ready to wrap. Dylan, anything to add?
No, just want to mention again, those lights flashing red at Kimberley still ongoing. We got a call from Kevin that backup is actually grown all the way to McLeod at this time. So likely going to be some issues for the rest, or for a little while longer on your morning commute. So keep in mind.
Annoying. Thank you. Not you. The lineup.
I understand. I think.
Dylan Longhurst filling in for Corey this morning. All right, Abby, what do we know about the weather?
A mix of sun and clouds across the province today. We'll see temperatures warming up from 16 in Thompson to 27 in Dauphin. Winnipeg would get to a high of 19 today. It's going to be cool, stay cool, enjoy your weekend, and we will be warming up to the 27s from tomorrow.
All right, we'll take it, I think.
I'll take it.
Looking at that map on YouTube Kevin just put up, it's like, wow, those temperatures. Pretty cool today. Take care, be well, everybody. Enjoy your weekend when you get there. And thank you again for listening to Information Radio on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and we hope you join us again on Monday.